Hey guys, tonight we're not setting sail with pirates. No creaking ships, no soggy boots, no sunburnt sailors arguing with seagulls that started it. Instead, we're stepping into something older, hotter, sandier, and honestly way more impressive than any pirate treasure chest. We're drifting right into ancient Egypt, land of sunlight, limestone, and architectural flexing so powerful that modern people still insist aliens probably did it. Before we wander into the desert winds and the quiet brilliance of ancient engineers, go ahead and like the video and subscribe, but only if this kind of cozy, mildly nerdy bedtime history adventure actually helps you drift off. If not, that's totally fine. Even Egyptians didn't agree on everything, especially not the workers arguing about who misplaced the copper chisels again. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Somehow, it's always 2 a.m. somewhere. And if you're here, you're probably trying to fall asleep to the comforting thought that at least you don't have to haul multi-ton limestone blocks in the desert after eating nothing but bread, onions, and beer. Now dim those lights, switch on a fan for that soft white noise breeze, sink into your pillow, and maybe tuck your feet under a blanket, not because of imaginary rats this time, but because an ancient Egyptian foreman might appear in a dream to remind you that your work quota for the day is behind. Unlikely, but those guys were efficient. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what building the pyramids actually felt like? Not the movie version, no golden chariots, no overly dramatic slow-motion boulder rolling, and definitely no alien overlords handing out blueprints like intergalactic office supervisors. I mean the real experience. The sweat, the planning, the logistics, the quiet jokes exchanged while shaping stone, and the brilliant math that kept the whole thing from collapsing like a badly built IKEA shelf. What did it feel like to walk onto a construction site where tens of thousands of workers, free, fed, skilled, showed up every day like, yeah, let's build something the future will still be arguing about 4,500 years from now? What was it like to work beside architects who could look at a flat stretch of desert and see a perfect geometric giant rising from the earth? What did it feel like to trust the sun, the stars, the rope grids, and the teamwork of thousands to get each block exactly, painfully aligned? What did it feel like to be part of something enormous, not for a king, not for aliens, but for identity, pride, purpose, for the idea that humans could leave a mark on the world that even time would hesitate to erase? Tonight, we're going to drift gently into that world, not to prove anything, not to debunk anything too aggressively, but to feel it softly, like warm sunlight on limestone, like sand brushing your ankles, like the distant rhythm of workers hauling stone in unison, like the hum of a civilization building its own immortality. So take a slow breath in. Let the noise of your day fade out like wind across the desert, and imagine a horizon of pyramids rising, one block at a time, under human hands. Not slaves, not aliens, just people who knew exactly what they were doing. Settle in. Close your eyes if you haven't already, and let the story begin. Chapter 1. The Stones That Defy Imagination. And now, as your breath slows, and the world around you softens into a gentle late-night blur, let's drift to a place where sand meets sky, where the horizon hums with ancient heat, and where human imagination has never fully caught up to what humans actually achieved. Picture this: a sweeping, sun-drenched vista of the Giza Plateau. Not a postcard, not a documentary still, but your moment in history. The desert stretches outward in warm, endless waves. Golden dunes ripple like the surface of a sleeping sea, and rising from this vast, shimmering silence stand three colossal shapes: the Great Pyramids. Not distant, not tiny triangles on a faraway horizon. Here they are enormous, overwhelming, unapologetically present. Their limestone faces gleam under the Egyptian sun, each block catching the light like the scales of some ancient stone creature. Up close, the sheer scale bends belief. Millions of blocks, each one heavier than your car, stacked with precision so uncanny that even modern engineers raise an eyebrow. The sky above is a deep, impossibly clear blue, a dome so vast and pure it feels like this landscape was carved out of time itself. Heat drifts along the ground in lazy waves, curling around your ankles like warm ghosts. For a moment, you feel small, not in a frightening way, but in the way that reminds you the world is ancient, and humans have been doing impossible things long before electricity, cranes, or conspiracy theorists with YouTube channels. The pyramids do not whisper, they do not glow, they do not beam messages to passing aliens. They simply stand, immovable and unbothered, as if amused that anyone ever doubted who built them. And as you take them in, as you tilt your head back so far that your neck protests, you begin to feel it. The presence of thousands upon thousands of workers, farmers, artisans, stonecutters, engineers, not slaves, not extraterrestrials, but people. Ordinary people with calloused hands and sunburned shoulders, with families waiting at home, with jokes whispered over lunch, and arguments about tools, and moments of pride as they watched this city of stone rise higher and higher. Imagine them climbing wooden ramps, pulling ropes, chanting in rhythmic unison, their feet stomping in time with a beat older than kingdoms. You can almost hear the thud of stone on sand, the scrape of chisels, the deep, steady breathing of people who believed, truly believed, that building something monumental was a way to touch eternity. They weren't forced. They were paid, housed, fed, given medical care, and honored for their labor. These pyramids were not monuments to oppression. They were monuments to organization, teamwork, engineering, humanity. But as you stand here, with the warm desert air brushing against your cheeks and grains of ancient sand whispering around your ankles, the enormity of it still feels unreal. How could people without steel tools, without engines, without satellite measurements, build something so precise that modern lasers can barely find a flaw? And yet, they did. Because humans, long before smartphones, long before skyscrapers, long before modern comfort, have always carried brilliance in their bones. This view, this dramatic skyline of stone and sand, asks nothing of you except wonder. So take a slow breath. Let the desert stillness settle into your chest, and stand for a moment in the shadow of a structure older than your imagination, older than most civilizations, older than recorded history itself. The pyramids do not need your belief. They simply exist, silent, majestic, human. And as you drift deeper into this ancient landscape, let awe wash over you, softly, slowly, like desert wind between the stones. Chapter 2. The Architect Who Drew the Impossible. And now, as your breath settles into a slow, easy rhythm, as the noise of your day softens into the distance like sand carried off by a warm desert breeze, let's drift into a world where precision was sacred, where geometry was a kind of prayer, and where human hands, not aliens, not magic, shaped stone into eternity. Picture this: a sunlit chamber deep within the heart of an ancient Egyptian workshop. The walls are cool limestone, smooth beneath centuries of dust and time. The air smells faintly of crushed ochre, ground charcoal, and the dry sweetness of papyrus. Light enters from a small, narrow slit in the wall, creating a single beam that falls like a spotlight onto a wooden table. At that table sits a man, an architect, not a laborer, not a mystic, a thinker. His posture is straight, almost rigid with focus, as if even the slightest movement might disrupt the mental universe he's constructing. His hands, steady, ink-stained, deliberate, hover over a perfectly flattened sheet of papyrus. And on that papyrus, a drawing, not a sketch, not an inspired doodle, but a geometry so precise it looks like it might have been printed by a modern engineer. A flawless square, the base of a pyramid, its proportions meticulously measured, each line crisp and absolute. Around it, careful notations in hieratic script, angles, lengths, gradients, instructions for quarries, directives for rope teams. He is not guessing. He is not improvising. He is calculating. The beam of sunlight glides slowly across his face, revealing eyes sharp with intention. The eyes of someone who understands that the shape he is designing must hold the weight of millions of stones, must withstand desert winds for thousands of years, must align with stars that appear only briefly in the horizon's twilight. He breathes slowly, as if syncing his heartbeat to the rhythm of the cosmos. Behind him, apprentices whisper as softly as shifting sand. One grinds pigment, another sorts reed pens by thickness. A third waits nervously, holding a measuring cord woven to a precise length. The legendary cord of 12 knots, used by Egyptian rope stretchers, the original surveyors who mapped the desert with mathematical exactness. The architect gestures for the cord. The apprentice hands it over with reverence. The architect stretches it taut across the papyrus, aligning it perfectly with the grid he has drawn. This is no mystical ritual. This is early engineering, clean, elegant, fundamental. With each movement, he verifies the measurements that will dictate the orientation of the pyramid itself. The true north alignment, the slope of the sides, the exact dimensions that will turn organized manpower into monumental architecture. Outside, through the workshop doorway, you can hear the distant sounds of a construction site. Stone rollers creaking, workers chanting to stay in rhythm, the thud of wooden sledges gliding over wet sand. All of it, every shout, every tool, every stone, depends on the lines this architect is drawing right now. He pauses, lifts the papyrus, holds it up to the beam of sunlight, as though offering it to Ra himself. In that moment, the drawing glows, a golden square floating in the desert light. The architect studies it, breath steady, as if he's peering into the future, seeing the pyramid long after he is gone, still standing under the same sun, still defying wind and time and human disbelief. Because great monuments don't begin with alien beams or forgotten magic. They begin with thought, with planning, with minds capable of extraordinary precision. Tonight, in the quiet of this ancient chamber, you stand beside one such mind, an architect who shaped stone by first shaping ideas, one perfect line at a time. Let the calm settle around you. Let the stillness of the workshop hold you gently. Let the geometry of a civilization older than memory carry you softly into the next chapter of the story. Chapter 3: The Tomb of Cleopatra. Hey guys, welcome back to this cozy nook of mildly interesting history. A place less tense than attempting to assemble IKEA furniture with only half the screws. Tonight, we travel back through the sands of time to witness a dramatic scene that will make you want to grab some popcorn or, I don't know, ancient grain bread while we're at it. Picture this: Mark Antony, yes, the dashing Roman general, not the singer, wounded, bleeding, and being hoisted through a window like an overstuffed turkey into Cleopatra's tomb. Romantic, right? Spoiler alert, it's not going to go how you think. As we plunge our brains into the dampness of this ancient tomb, let's reflect for a moment. Imagine the level of awkwardness if you had to share a small space with someone you were desperately trying to impress, while also bleeding profusely. A scenario that rivals most of your first dates, I bet. Have you ever wondered what would happen if your romantic rendezvous turned into a medical emergency? Or, worse yet, how you'd hide embarrassing bodily fluids? Wait, you haven't imagined such things? Oh, I assure you, you're not alone. Ancient romance was never shy on the ew factor. Congratulations, dear listener. You've just woken up in the year 30 BCE, and things are decidedly tense. As the moonlight trickles into the dimly lit chamber, you find yourself cloaked in an atmosphere heavier than a hippo trying to fit into a tiny swim ring. The chamber smells like a cross between roses and the distinct whiff of panic. That's right, anxiety has a scent, and in this case, it's mingled with a hint of thief-hired perfumes. It's not what you'd call a spa day. Around you, walls adorned with golden carvings shimmer with the reflections of flickering oil lamps. Who knew candles could have so much drama? This is clearly not a space for subtlety. Everywhere you look, riches abound in gleaming colors that would make even the most ostentatious real estate agent proud. But let's be honest, you're not here for the decor. You're here for Cleopatra and her ride or die, Mark Antony, who's now flopped into the chamber like a fish out of water, only considerably more tragic. Can you hear Antony's labored breathing? Close your eyes. Imagine how heavy the silence must feel, thick enough to slice through with a ceremonial dagger. As he's being pulled in, you can almost hear him internally debating whether the grand entrance or the bleed-out scene is less romantic. And there's Cleopatra, standing there, with the poise of someone trying to maintain her cool, while her love interest suddenly resembles a crumpled napkin. Talk about making a dramatic entrance. Cleopatra rushes to him, her silk garments flowing like a well-rehearsed dance. Think less ballet and more Shakespearean tragedy. Ever wonder what it's like to comfort someone who's having the worst day of their life while you're trying not to scream every time you see a new gash on your beloved? You'd think someone would have invented a more effective first aid strategy back then. Instead, Cleopatra might have just gotten her herbal tea recipe mixed in with some form of ancient medical advice. Could you imagine whiskey being the top recommendation? Take 2 shots and call me in the morning. Just doesn't have the same ring in ancient Egypt. As she kneels beside him, you can almost hear her whispering sweet nothings amidst the chaos, a love story unfolding amid the existential dread of, the whole impending doom thing. I'd like to help you, my darling, but I can't seem to find the right bandages in my purse, she might be thinking. Or perhaps she's mentally calculating how many more taxes she has to levy on the peasants to fund a better medic. Decisions, decisions. Suddenly, an unexpected shift in the atmosphere occurs. The air is thick with a blend of desperation and undying love, while the flickering lamplight casts dramatic shadows akin to the latest blockbuster movie. It's like Netflix, but with more sand and fewer streaming subscriptions. But let's face it, their Netflix equivalent probably involved a scroll and a rather hefty library fine. Now, the drama of the moment hangs like an overripe fig. What will Cleopatra do? Will she grab a first aid kit, or does she have a secret stash of medieval magic hidden beneath her flowing skirts? The tension is thicker than a suspiciously rich pharaoh's breakfast pudding recipe. As Antony slumps against the cool stone, you can practically hear his inner monologue complaining about life choices. Should I have stayed home? Should I have worn more armor? Why isn't there Uber for this? Your thoughts race wild. They could have had their honeymoon here if only things hadn't taken such a tragic turn. Will Cleopatra sweet-talk him back to health, or does destiny have other plans? Will they share lovingly about the good old days of wine and laughter while figuring out how to dodge multiple hostile battles? And just when you thought things couldn't get any more theatrical, guess who barges in next? Yeah, you got it. Maybe we'll leave that revelation for the deeper layers of this tomb, where both love and betrayal carved their names. This is history, after all, full of mortals and their subpar choices, where every great love story dances precariously close to disaster. Just another day in the life of the ancient elite, splendid jewelry and questionable romantic decisions galore. So lean back, coziest of listeners. As Antony takes his last breaths, let us remember to also embrace the hilarity and absurdity tangled in our own stories. For in love and in life, who truly gets out unscathed? Chapter 4. Workin' for the Pharaoh's Bread. The truth about pyramid builders. As the sun rises over the golden sands of Giza, bathing the landscape in soft, ethereal light, let's talk about the bustling scene before the Great Pyramid of Giza, around 2560 BCE, when pyramid construction reached its glorious peak. Today, we explore the truth behind the myth that these magnificent structures were built by disgruntled aliens or overworked, underfed slaves. Spoiler alert, neither are true. But hey, you seem like you could use a laugh. Picture this: tens of thousands of skillful Egyptian workers, their faces dusted with desert grit and glistening with the sweat of craftsmanship, are lining up each morning, not for a grueling day of back-breaking labor, but for their daily wages and generous bread rations. Ah yes, bread, the one staple that could unite an entire civilization, much like pizza does today, minus the crazy toppings. Goats in every combination? Perhaps not. Start to picture this astounding scene. You, my sleepy friend, find yourself among those workers, adjusting your linen tunic with the grace of a swaying palm tree. The sun's rays feel like a warm hug, not the suffocating embrace of a well-meaning relative, but a delightful caress reminding you that you get to eat carbs today. What kind of wage assignment do you think would be more exhilarating? Accepting payment in cinnamon rolls, or discussing the nuances of grain distribution with a serious-looking scribe? Pinky promise, there's no wrong answer. As you saunter to the front of the line, you're greeted by a man begrudgingly handing out bread loaves, like he's managed to snag the empire's accountant job. "Here you go, worker," he says, clearly not having eaten breakfast and simultaneously questioning his life choices, like you, just before that third cup of coffee. This is a delightful reversal, isn't it? Unlike that sinking feeling of watching your Monday morning latte slip through your fingers onto your perfectly clean shirt, these folks were actually getting something in return for their labor. Curious about how a society built pyramids without the sullen faces of enslaved people? Well, you might find it's less of a mystery and more of a historical comedy. You see, these pyramids were not just the work of hapless souls dragged from their homes. These were skilled laborers. Think of a construction crew, but with fewer hard hats and way more sandals. In fact, it's likely that these workers were not only well-fed, but also had their own permanent housing. Imagine it. Instead of living in a squalid setup resembling a college dorm filled with mismatched furniture, they resided in neatly organized work camps, complete with all the essentials. Sure, it lacked the latest Netflix subscription, but hey, who needs sitcoms when you have a front row seat to a pyramid rising against the sky? Now, let's dig a bit deeper, pun intended. We'll save ancient Egyptians' fascination with grains for another day. The construction of the Great Pyramid is estimated to have employed around 20,000 to 30,000 laborers. You might be picturing the crammed conditions of a modern office space, but this was far more organized. There were divisions that ensured workers were assigned specific tasks, much like a weekend DIY project where half the crew aims for epic fail, while the other half just hopes the roof doesn't collapse during the big reveal. Each worker was responsible for transporting massive limestone blocks. But here's the kicker. Science has shown that these blocks were often quarried in a much more ingenious manner than simply dragging them across the desert floor like a frustrated toddler with a toy. They developed clever systems like sleds, or was it a makeshift hoverboard, that helped reduce friction, making their jobs more manageable. Need I remind you of your last IKEA furniture assembly experience? If they could build a legendary structure while seamlessly keeping their fingers away from the sharp edges, humanity would be better today, all right? And let's not forget the laughter pouring out of nearby work camps. Humor likely echoed through the valleys like a well-timed punchline to a joke only Egyptians would get. What's worse than missing your deadline? Getting sand in your bread. Yes, they had a way of keeping spirits high, probably with a lack of awkward small talk too. So, about the weather. It's very sunny for the next 20 years, right? Yet, beneath all this laughter, there was work to do and leaders to appease. Pharaoh Khufu had visions of grandeur, that is, when he wasn't busy squeezing his royal nose into pyramids. So, how did they master the balance of labor and humor? By hiring everyone's favorite cheerleader, skilled laborers who knew how to construct efficiently, with experience, and with a full belly of bread. Fascinatingly, this gives a whole new meaning to breadwinner, doesn't it? And let's take a moment to pour a metaphorical cup of tea for the slaves myth. While ancient labor could certainly edge toward exploitativeness, it was more about bonding with the earth and creating something monumental. Workers evolved from their daily grind, feeling productive rather than exploited. Plus, if they felt overworked, all it would take is a buddy to say, "Hey, let's take 15 and plan how we can get that third pyramid built in a flash." Problem solving at its finest, folks. So, as the sun sets behind the Great Pyramid, painting the sky in gradients of pink genius, think of those workers heading home after another full, satisfying day, not to a miserable existence, but to share stories, laughter, and maybe even a few pithy jokes about the day's shenanigans. Who says history needs to be dull? The sands may whisper tales of struggle, but beneath them rests an endless reservoir of joy, camaraderie, and of course, the warmth of good, crusty bread. Now, wouldn't that make a great sleep story? Perhaps snuggled up next to your own loaf of bread, dreaming about ancient grains and vibrant joy, while the stars twinkle like the hands of a clock, nudging you gently into slumber. Chapter 5. Mastering Pyramids, Not Just a Block Party. Now that our imaginations are dancing among pyramids like a quirky conga line at an ancient Egyptian's version of a block party, let's delve deeper into the days when foremen were the style icons of Giza. Picture it. The sun, a glowing orb of enthusiasm, slides over the horizon. In the heart of Giza, the Great Pyramid looms, a massive, unfinished triangle of awe and ambition, a stone testament to human ingenuity. You feel the warm breeze ruffle your linen tunic, which, let's be honest, is a mixed bag of fashion and practicality. As you take it all in, you can't help but wonder, what if you could channel that ancient builder vibe in your life today? Would you wear sandals or modern sneakers while trying to build your very own DIY shelf? Spoiler alert, The shelf may end up resembling more of a modern art installation rather than actual furniture. Now, imagine a nearby foreman, the kind of guy who has motivational quotes on the back of his papyrus scrolls, or maybe even yells, "Let's build something great," at least once every minute, punctuated by an enthusiastic hand gesture directed at the enormous pile of limestone waiting impatiently to be turned into a wonder. He struts around with a well-groomed beard, sufficiently oiled, of course, giving instructions like a conductor leading an orchestra of hardened laborers. "That block doesn't want to move itself," he bellows, pinching the bridge of his nose in a moment worthy of a comedic sketch, as if resisting the urge to bust out an ancient stand-up routine. His crew of construction workers, far from sullen slaves, are actually a group of determined craftsmen, each with more skills than a modern-day TikTok influencer. They're like a jigsaw puzzle, each piece fitting perfectly together to make sure the pyramid doesn't just stand tall, but looks fabulous doing it. You can practically hear them exchanging jokes as they haul limestone, making puns while laboring under the punishing sun as if auditioning for a reality show titled "The Real Builders of Giza." Hey, can't we use these blocks for a swimming pool instead? Because let me tell you, I'd rather be lounging by water than hauling these rocks. That's Bob, the enthusiastic worker who's always dreaming about leisure rather than labor. His charming personality is a hit, even if his plumbing ideas tend to go belly up faster than a fish out of water. You stand amazed at the sheer organization among the chaotic construction site. Workers are grouped into teams with titles that would make modern office administrators green with envy. Block transporters, or, my personal favorite, rock rollers. You can't help but chuckle thinking about the absurdity of it all. How many BuzzFeed quizzes do you think you could take before receiving the title, "Which ancient Egyptian worker are you?" Spoiler, the answer would probably point to you as grumpy but enthusiastic bread lover. Every morning, as the sun climbs higher, the excitement grows. Workers arrive, each with their own personal stone flutes. You assume they are playing tunes like Hot Cross Buns, or maybe Sandwich Jamboree, a song not lost to history. You picture yourself standing on a nearby hill, trying to get a better view, only to be quickly shooed away by the foreman. "Hey, this isn't a concert. We have a pyramid to build." It gets real when the foreman insists everyone takes a break after each block laid, because good morale is key here, folks. So why are these workers so chipper? Bread. Oh yes, glorious bread, given at mealtime like it's the all-you-can-eat buffet that somehow keeps everyone going. This daily treat turns into a gossip fest, revolving around who baked the best loaf or who accidentally started a fire while trying to toast their rations. "Listen," you can hear one worker say, "if bread isn't on a stick and charred to perfection, what's the point?" You can practically picture the fires they must have ignited. And let's not forget about those massive limestone blocks. As the workers maneuver them with impressive sneaky efficiency, you wonder if any blocks have ever snuck off for a holiday while pretending to be an insignificant pebble. Good luck with that, though. You could spot those massive stones lounging by the Nile, aiming for sunbathing selfies if they had social media. Now, let's consider how, despite their extraordinary skills, they still pass the time with good-natured ribbing and quick-witted banter. If someone accidentally gets barefoot on a sandy surface, you can almost hear the crowd roar. Watch out! Our friend is going to create the hottest new trend in foot accessories. Limited edition, sand, only available today. But it isn't all one-liners and sandcastles. Pharaoh Khufu has visions that are as ambitious as they are imposing, imagining himself with his very own giant triangular monument, a direct challenge toward immortality, or perhaps just a sweet retirement plan. As the foreman snaps his finger in exasperation, you wonder if Khufu skipped the morning bread and is currently hangry, ordering the workers to pick up speed. If only stopping for an extra slice was socially acceptable. But alas, that dream will have to wait. And as twilight falls over Giza, painting the rocks in pink hues, workers fold their arms, satisfied with another superb day's work. They grab their favorite stone-made laying mat. No, it's not just a fancy picnic blanket. It's more like a "we got this" energy closure of the day that makes them feel like they completely conquered the pyramid matters. Sure, they may return to those cozy work camps where leftovers line the meals, because recycling food is the big trend of the lottery around here. But at least they'll have the laughter echoing through the night. As the desert sky fills with stars, horizon lines soften, and mystery dances around the pyramid's enchanting silhouette. You drift off to sleep, comforted by the warmth of camaraderie, someone's hearty laughter, and the distant sense that those ancient builders found joy amid monumental labor. And now, dear friend, will you dream of pyramids rising, or the possibilities of someday building your own shelf and being forgiven every time it's more artistic than functional?
Chapter 6.
The Mathematical Assassins of Pyramid Planning. Now that we're warmed up with foremen akin to ancient day superstars, let's pivot to the masterminds behind the scenes, the mathematical assassins of pyramid planning. Imagine yourself entering a steamy workshop filled with the scent of parchment, the whir of calculation, and just the faintest whiff of desperation as they realize they've run out of coffee. Well, coffee isn't quite a thing yet, but let's go with it for effect. Welcome to the year 2560 BCE, where precision was just as essential as a good beard oil. Close your eyes and picture this: a group of sharp-eyed scribes huddled over detailed papyrus maps like they're in a high-stakes game of ancient battleship. The Great Pyramid isn't going to build itself, after all. But you know, if it could, it'd probably ask for a nice look at its angles, perhaps a makeover to up its gee whiz factor. These visionaries are armed with all the tools necessary for the monumental task at hand. Their tools don't include fancy calculators or laptops, mind you. Oh no, they rely on geometry more than anyone trying to explain TikTok to their parents. Okay, team, one of them, let's call him Pythagoras 2.0, says with the intensity of a cat trying to catch an elusive red dot. We need to ensure that our angles are sharper than a fresh papyrus scroll. A 51-degree slope, and don't go messing it up this time, or we'll end up with a really ironic ziggurat instead. As you meander through their workshop, the sound of their animated banter wiggles its way into your ear. What if it looks like a gigantic wedding cake? Another scribe quips, holding up a smaller model of the pyramid. Laughter erupts like the sweet sound of a well-timed punchline, echoing down the halls of human creativity. Now, why do we call them mathematical assassins? A title not earned lightly, I assure you. It's because these guys could dissect angles the way a chef preps a chicken, all while ensuring the future pharaoh doesn't walk up to an unintended leaning tower of Giza. While everyone else is busy hauling the enormous limestone blocks, these men are cracking equations that would make even today's engineers take a moment to reflect. In this chaotic yet meticulously organized bedlam, you find groups of scribes with personalized nicknames. The Angle Whisperer scribbles notes torn between poetry and geometry. Blockbuster Larry draws the sketches, proclaiming them the next blockbuster hit. Yep, that's right, the one with all the right angles and a rather catchy title, Giza, the Rise of the Triangular Republic. As the day progresses, excitement mounts, akin to waiting for the next episode of your favorite show. One of them jumps up and proclaims, "Have we considered structural integrity? We don't want our pyramid to turn into a massive geometric pancake." You can almost see a faint
Shiver run through the assembled crowd at the very thought. Pyramid or pancake? You decide. But let's work towards keeping the pastries in the bakery.
And just when you think it can't get any more exhilarating, the discussion shifts to logistics. "Every single block has to be transported precisely," someone chimes in, clearly preparing to unleash their inner logistics guru. "Think of it like delivering pizzas just to Pharaoh's palace, but with about 1,000,000 times more weight and 0 tip." Some of the men express their fears. "But what if the delivery cart breaks? Have we thought this through?" Moments later, silence falls heavy. Each scribe glances nervously at their compatriots, their hands practically itching for a clay tablet as they sketch delivery routes and wait per block in the faint candlelight, illuminated by the fiery passion to build something great. Let's pause for a moment here. Think about planning an IKEA build today. Endless parts, confusing instructions, and a nagging sense that the universe is conspiring against you. Now elevate that anxiety to pyramid levels, where a single miscalculation could result in a monolithic mess instead of a monument. You know, the kind of oops that goes down in history. "Next time, let's just make a solid cube and call it a day," someone must have said at least once. But that's not how legacies are built, right? A trademark feature of these ancient planners was bread, glorious bread, because even mathematical assassins need sustenance. At break time, massive loaves abound, with workers tearing pieces off more enthusiastically than a mob at a sale on discount fabric. Is this a baker's secret formula, you wonder? Not today, my friend. This bread was like winning the lottery, abundant enough to keep spirits high and minds sharp. As the sun descends over the horizon, splashing warm, honeyed colors across the sky, the scribes breathe a collective sigh, proud of another day's meticulous plotting. They walk home, tired yet elated, knowing that tomorrow will bring even grander ideas, like actually convincing the pharaoh that a pyramid also doubles as an air conditioner if strategically placed. And just like that, the wheels of creativity keep spinning. So as you drift off to slumber, you can cling to that tantalizing notion. Will you wake up in tomorrow's dream chasing those mathematical assassins?
or perhaps pondering the intricacies of modern IKEA furniture assembly. Either way, may your dreams be filled with coherent angles and joyous bread, because who wouldn't want that?
Chapter 7. The Great Pyramid Neighborhood Watch. Now that we've had our fun with mathematical mischief makers, let's slide into the absolutely riveting world of the pyramid construction neighborhood. Welcome to the bustling metropolis surrounding the Great Pyramid, circa 2560 BCE. Picture it now, if you will, a completely unincorporated town, dotted with worker housing and astonishingly advanced for its time. At least as advanced as people living in mud houses could ever manage. As you begin your nighttime stroll through this ancient neighborhood, the first thing you notice is the wonderful aroma of freshly baked bread wafting through the air. A miracle of civilization, this bread, brought to you by industrious bakers who, by all accounts, had perfected the art of making dough rise long before anyone thought to ask why it rose at all. Why do we eat it, you ponder? Isn't it just fancy paperweight? Turns out, back then, a good loaf of bread was the original home delivery meal. Much tastier than whatever you find on that stale microwave pizza from last weekend. In the homes surrounding the Great Pyramid, made of mud brick and a smattering of good intentions, thousands of loyal workers reside. It's more like a share house meltdown than a cohesive neighborhood, with families dodging each other, the neighbors feuding about the pyramid's color, and, of course, the ever-present battle over who has the best spot for their livestock. Chickens, goats, and the occasional disgruntled cat become unwittingly embroiled in these disputes as they scurry about, contemplating whether they're part of the conversation or simply fodder for future stews. Wander a little closer, and you might catch the distinct sound of haggling coming from a small marketplace. Hearing this, you could easily be mistaken for thinking you stumbled into a modern-day flea market. Picture this: vendors yelling, "Get your fresh papyrus here! Only 5 loaves of bread per scroll," while bewildered customers squint at them, probably thinking the bread is the better deal. Outrageous, isn't it? The authorities probably grumbled about this hidden marketplace being an economic detour. Imagine the police officer snug in his mud hut, writing traffic citations for opting to barter instead of using good old cash. But fear not, for this isn't just a social hotbed for commerce. The Great Pyramid neighborhood shares an intricate system of freshwater distribution canals, snaking their way through the landscape like so many lazy snakes coiling around a particularly bountiful oasis. These ditches carry precious water from the Nile River, where a mini traffic jam of fishermen and crocodiles bemoan their fates as they navigate the crowded waters. "Can you believe this?" one crocodile grumbles to the other. "Back in my day, it was all about sunbathing and eating. Now I have to compete with these demanding workers yelling about hydration. We didn't have this much." Discussion over fish. Life is good for the durable labor force, bolstered by ample food supply routes transporting heaping mounds of onions, garlic, and the star of the show, beer and more beer. Yes, you heard that correctly. Beer. The ancient Egyptians had perfected their ale long ago, and every first day of the month offering would inevitably involve a communal toast. May your work be light, and this beer be even lighter, one worker might shout. In fact, such joyous festivities could lead to elaborate toasts, the kind that'd make you wonder whether these people were building a pyramid or hosting a neighborhood block party. But with all that bread and beer circulating, you can't help but wonder, how do they keep track of it all? Welcome to the meticulous world of record keeping. Picture a fleet of scribes armed with papyrus and their finest quills, furiously sketching out the blueprint of this vibrant hive of activity. 1 loaf per worker, 2 loaves for the foreman, and oh dear, we can't forget about the nightly beer budget, they mutter with furrowed brows. It's like watching a reality show where everyone is trying to lose weight, but only the bread and beer seem to be in high demand. As nighttime descends, the village quiets, the clamor softening to a gentle hush that envelops the labor zone. Homes that had previously echoed with the sounds of children playing and goats bleating settle into a lull as workers crawl into their cozy beds of straw, hopefully without attracting any wayward insects. You can imagine them whispering sweet dreams to the towering behemoth that is the Great Pyramid standing proudly in the distance, dreaming of becoming a symbol of eternity, even as their own dreams start to drift into slumber. Before you drift off, just consider, if the launch of the Great Pyramid's construction operated on good times, hearty laughter, and shall we say, a moderate hint of beer, what would our modern lives look like? Perhaps that never-ending quest for a good bread recipe begins at your local bar instead of the store. Who could have known the key to happiness was there all along? And so, as you nestle deeper into your dreams, remember the beautifully absurd montage of life in this ancient neighborhood. People gathering, plotting, laughing, and oh yes, perhaps sipping that extra pint, all underneath the very first light reflecting off the Great Pyramid, a beacon of hope, hunger, and strangely, a desire for a good bread recipe. Sleep well as the echoes of laughter fill the air, and perhaps dream of beer budgets and neighborhood brawls over livestock. Chapter 8. The Architect's Dilemma. Hey guys, welcome back to a cozy little historical journey, where tonight we delve into something more precarious than balancing your mother-in-law's expectations and your own sanity. The responsibilities of an ancient Egyptian architect during the construction of the Great Pyramid. Ah yes, it's finally time to dive headfirst into the chaotic whirlpool of mud, stones, and divine decree that made the pyramid-building frenzy of the Old Kingdom seem like a casual weekend DIY project. While you're getting settled, dim the lights and maybe grab a snack that's definitely better than stale bread from your last grocery haul, but only if you enjoy it. Just picture our architect, legs wobbling like a newborn calf on a flaming hot day, glancing up at the colossal monument he's supposed to finish before the pharaoh, in all his wonderfully exaggerated grandeur, becomes one with the stars. Now let's think about that for just a moment. How does one even approach designing a structure that's practically screaming, "Look at me, I am the biggest, stoniest sign of my very important existence"? Ever tried to build a sand castle while a wave is looming? That's basically what this guy was facing daily, minus the sunscreen. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 2560 BCE with the sun rising over Giza. The day begins, and there's your architect, let's call him Ibrahim, standing nervously at the foot of this mammoth undertaking, gazing up the nearly finished pyramid like a doting parent at a school play gone bizarrely off script. His list of tasks right now? Strikingly familiar to anyone who's ever tackled an ambitious home renovation. You know, making sure the stone blocks aren't suddenly playing hide and seek, ensuring the workforce is still alive and caffeinated, and resolving a minor existential crisis because, frankly, who really knows how many bricks you need for eternity? Picture the noise, the crumbling of sand, the clinking of metal tools, and the collective grunting of laborers as they haul stone blocks that weigh about as much as a very confused hippopotamus. Not to mention the clamor of negotiations happening in makeshift cafes, where local laborers argue about who owes whom a beer for having forgotten to bring lunch today. "I told you I'd bring the onions," one might shout, as the rest nod in unified suffering, their stomachs growling louder than a jackal at the moon. Every step you take closer to Ibrahim reveals more complexities than a soap opera back home. Is this monument more attractive than last year's pyramid? Will it outlast the competition? It's like living in a constant state of architectural influencer meetings, you muse, sighing softly as the weight of appreciation hangs in the air. How could you lose sleep over something like that? Oh, right, the impending doom of the pharaoh's looming disapproval. No pressure. Ibrahim paces like a disoriented penguin, trying to remind himself it's just a bunch of rocks, stacked a little bit higher than what they were yesterday. However, as you well know, anxiety has a sneaky way of turning mere rocks into the combined gravitational pull of an entire planet, or better yet, a spaceship. What if they're not perfectly squared? What if a block shifts while it's being hoisted, and the entire thing crumbles like my hopes of being an ancient architect? He frets, eyebrows nearly melded together in a well-practiced expression of dismay. And wouldn't you know it, but the gods seem to be having a jolly old time watching him unravel. You can practically hear divine laughter echoing in the air. "Hey Osiris, if this guy makes it through the week, I'll send him a trendy papyrus scroll," one god might chuckle while reclining on a mystical cloud. You can't help but imagine the architect waking up in the afterlife, finding a celestial voicemail along the lines of, "Actually, our bad. We thought you were going to turn it into a cozy vacation home, but it's still just a pyramid." As the day unfurls, nothing boosts morale like the scent of lunchtime brewing, a concoction of lentils, garlic, and possibly something decidedly less appealing that your nose starts questioning like Zeus on figure skating prowess. Workers gather around makeshift tables to discuss their method for dodging the pharaoh's wrath. "We could always just blame it on the weather," one might chuckle, while Ibrahim can only consider the sheer absurdity of it all. The sun dips low, casting elongated shadows that eerily resemble the stone blocks themselves, and you can't help but grunt at the humor of it all. It's like a cosmic game of Jenga, where every block removed feels like a personal attack on Ibrahim's very existence. But who doesn't love a bit of adrenaline before bedtime? And thus, as the stars blanket the night sky, our anxious architect looks up and sighs. He realizes that amid the pressures of immortality, pyramid heights, and stone-related stress, the project itself is a humble shrine to an era filled with laughter, camaraderie, and maybe a sprinkle of divine laughter. So as you fade into the comforts of sleep, take a moment to appreciate the weight of your own burdens, including those awkward family dinners, and rest assured that somewhere in Egypt, a slightly frazzled architect continues to dream about creating something even bigger than last year's pyramid, perhaps a pyramid with a hot tub. Sweet dreams as you float into the abyss of history, where gentle piles of laughter and looming monuments cradle you towards sleep. Chapter 9. Celestial Signposts in Sand. Hey guys, welcome back to your favorite cozy corner of mildly interesting history. Tonight, we'll embark on a journey that's as smooth as the finest Egyptian linen, and just as quirky as that one uncle everyone has who insists pyramids were built by aliens. Spoiler alert, they weren't. Instead, we'll be uncovering the absolutely puzzling realities of why pyramids were not built by slaves or extraterrestrial beings. Because, let's be real, those aliens probably had better things to do, like counting the rings on Saturn or perfecting intergalactic coffee brewing. But before we dive into the cosmos of ancient engineering, how about you dim those lights just a tad, put on a fan to simulate a refreshing desert breeze, and ensure you're nestled comfortably in bed, like a well-cooked Egyptian fig nestled in honey. We wouldn't want you feeling like a poorly stacked stone block, wobbly and on the verge of collapse. Now, what if I told you the pyramids were purposefully placed like cosmic signposts, aligned perfectly with the stars and celestial happenings? Think about it. Who had the time, energy, or motivation to sacrifice sleep for something just a tad more inspiring than a glorified storage unit for mummies? Not your average Joe. So, what was the deal? Were the architects up at night pondering the alignment of stars like they were deep in a game of celestial chess? Did they argue about the best view for sunset selfies long before social media existed? And, most importantly, did they ever wonder how to get a coffee stains out of thousands of meticulous papyrus scrolls? Congratulations! You've just woken up in the heart of ancient Egypt, around 2560 BCE. The sun rises over the Giza Plateau like a cosmic spotlight on a stage set for both earthly mortals and divine entities alike. You stretch, only to find yourself standing directly in front of the Great Pyramid, a structure looming high above you, its sharp edges slicing through the early morning haze like a hot knife through the thickest, most stubborn butter. Now, let's talk about the alignment of the pyramids, because it's more than just random building. Ancient Egyptians were basically the hipsters of their time. They didn't want just any old pile of rocks. They wanted a vibe. So these architects, probably fueled by a diet of lentil stew and strong sage advice, looked up at the stars and said, "You know, we should totally build that thing to align with the constellation Orion." Or was it Sirius? It could have been both for all we know. Either way, they clearly knew how to impress future generations, perhaps to make their own celestial TikTok. As you look closely, envision how they would have planned.
Imagine a huddle of architects with their heads bent together, squinting up at the skies, dodging the occasional pigeon while trying to take notes on wax tablets with tools that would make a modern-day pen look like a luxury item.
All right, guys, North Star there, and then Orion's belt slightly to the left. Let's not forget, Mrs. Nabet down the street is having a baby, so we better align this thing before she names it after us. You can almost hear their banter. Hey, remember when you suggested we just stack these rocks haphazardly? Look where that got us. 5 years of back-breaking labor and still no clear alignment. One architect might sigh, dreaming of the day he'd return to a simple stone hut where the biggest debate would be about whether barley or dates made a better breakfast. As these architects and workers hunched over their celestial scrolls, the sounds of chiseling met the whispers of the wind, carrying sage advice from the gods above. The laborers, dressed in simple linen, worked tirelessly, hauling blocks that weighed as much as a decent-sized camel. Each block carried with the teamwork of what can only be described as a miraculous Egyptian human crane. You could almost mistake it for a modern-day construction crew, if modern-day construction crews debated over whether it was better to carry the stones on their heads or their backs, while simultaneously pulling off a dance move from some ancient version of TikTok. It's fascinating, really. These structures were positioned with an accuracy that would make your GPS system look like a confused goat trying to find its way home. Imagine being on the Giza Plateau, where the pyramids cast long shadows that dance across the rising sun, creating patterns that make abstract art look like child's play. Is it a triangle? Is it a square? Who cares? It's all about how you feel when you look at it, the architects might cheer, sending a flock of startled ibises soaring into the clear sky. But amid this impressive engineering marvel, don't forget the comical reality of it all. While the architects were busy aligning stones and seeking divine guidance, they were probably also enduring typical workplace antics. Ever caught two of your colleagues arguing about whose turn it is to bring in snacks for the team? Picture instead a lively debate amongst architects over who left the goat dung where. Really, Amosa? On the drafts too? What? My grandmother told me it would bring good luck. And so, as the shadows grow long and the din of the workers fades into gentle murmurs, take a moment to soak in the absurdity of constructing something that not only served as a tomb, but a symbolic bridge to the afterlife. Each calculated block was a triumph of teamwork, clever planning, and perhaps an absurd amount of eye-rolling over the daily antics. And so, as your eyelids grow heavy and you drift off toward slumber, remember the ancient architects and their celestial blueprints, arranging stones while dreaming of alignment with the heavens, all while dodging the occasional squawk from an unimpressed ibis. Sweet dreams of cosmic pyramids and architectural antics await you, dear listener, as you float comfortably into that comforting abyss of bedtime history. Bedtime. Chapter 10. The Pyramid Parade of Flawless Planning. Hey guys, buckle up your linen tunics. Tonight we're blasting off into the golden sands of ancient Egypt, where the Great Pyramid of Giza was born, not from slavery, and certainly not from aliens, but rather from a procession of proud architects strutting their stuff like they were in the ultimate parade of human ingenuity. And oh, believe me, it was way more entertaining than your last family reunion, where Uncle Osiris droned on about that one time he saw a particularly impressive pile of sand. Now, before we dig into this wondrous tale of monumental achievement and some truly questionable fashion choices, let's take a moment, like a refreshing splash of Nile water on a warm day, to remind you to hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment if you enjoy our bedtime history shenanigans. But only if you actually enjoy it. You wouldn't want to enact mandatory pyramid punishment, now would you? Imagine being compelled to stack bricks for eternity, wondering why you left all your online shopping for last-minute Khufu-style panic. So, let's settle in, shall we? Dim the lights to evoke the warm glow of ancient torches. Switch on that fan for a gentle breeze that smells faintly of, well, who knows what ancient Egyptians had in their laundry, but let's say it's the essence of success. Get comfortable, like a pharaoh lounging on a plush throne, one hand casually holding a date, while the other tries to perfect the art of not being overthrown. As you close your eyes and warm your imagination, consider this. Have you ever wondered how these ancient planners decided which way to stack those massive limestone blocks? Were they tossing coins, flipping papyrus scrolls, or maybe even arguing over the correct measurement units? Look, I'm not saying we should use cubits, but how else will we know who's got the better taste in geometry? Ah, the suspense is unbearable. But don't worry, you're about to be transported to, congratulations, you've just woken up in 2560 BCE, standing right in front of the Great Pyramid of Giza, marveling at the architectural genius that would put many modern skyscrapers to shame, even the ones that do their best to stand like Jenga towers. The sun has just peeked over the horizon, casting golden rays that dance atop the pyramid, a glimmering marvel that immediately gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling, even if it's slightly toasty underfoot. You squint into the brilliant light, catching glimpses of highly organized planners flitting around like bees in a field of flowers. Only their pollen is pure knowledge, and their hives consist of neatly stacked stone blocks. Picture this: the sounds of hammers chiseling soft limestone, intertwining with laughter as the architects boast about their shiny new mathematics. My ratios are more precise than your grandma's napkin folding skills, they might yell, their voices tinged with the joy of accomplishment. Can you hear it? The chorus of banter and the occasional, "Oops, was that block supposed to go higher?" rings out like sweet music. The planners, dressed in crisp linen, could easily be mistaken for ancient runway models. No doubt they compared tunic styles and hair accessories, ensuring every detailed element shouted, "We're the best engineers of the Nile." You can almost see one haplessly trip over a stone while gesturing grandly, only to blame a sneaky sand dune nearby. It's the kind of camaraderie that comes with being part of a project that would outlast every trend you've ever seen. Their blueprints flutter in the breeze, adorned with sketches so meticulous you think they had access to Pinterest boards a couple millennia in advance. All right, folks, let's align this monster with Orion, so when future humans look back, they think we somehow summoned cosmic help. Who needs alien technology when you have fundamental geometry? As you dive deeper into this charming world, the planners gather in circles, pondering plans that, let's be real, could only anticipate a millennium or two of societal fluctuation. Imagine their discussions. Will this pyramid still be relevant when vinyl records go out of style? They might chortle, their humor sharper than a freshly honed chisel. After all, who needs Instagram influencers when you have a timeless monument to flaunt for the ages? Picture the workers as well, who play an essential role in this bustling symphony of dust and determination. They haul limestone blocks with an energy not unlike your own when there's a sale at your favorite store. One more block, and then we can take a break for some lentil stew, a fervent shout echoes as sweat beads on brows that would put a leisurely spa day to shame. Of course, there are always the jokesters in the crowd, ensuring that the atmosphere remains light despite the monumental task at hand. You know, if we mess this up, I just hired a pyramid-scheming alien to help, one worker snickers, possibly imagining their own version of alien building contractors, blasting laser beams instead of using simple ramps. Each cut stone, every meticulously placed block, serves as a timeless testament to those who dared to dream. In their laughter and hustle, it's hard to believe these monumental achievements were born from anything less than joy and a pinch of competitive spirit. The completion of the pyramid wasn't merely about architecture. It was a badge of honor, a funny tale passed down through generations, sprinkled with humor about the struggles of ancient Egyptian life. So as you drift comfortably into slumber, remember this. Just like the Great Pyramid wasn't built in a day, neither are your bedtime dreams. Let the sounds of laughter and the echoes of hard-fought triumphs guide you into that gentle abyss. Sweet dreams of absurd architectural adventures await you, dear listener, as you float effortlessly into your own cosmic realms. Chapter 11. Chiseling Through It All. So, let's talk about quarries. Imagine striding through history as you embark on a not-so-epic journey to a limestone quarry. Oh yes, dear listener, you've transitioned from pyramid perfection to the grittier, rockier world where the Great Pyramid begins its less glamorous story. Picture this like your old high school prom, but instead of dancing, you're chiseling stone blocks while dodging very enthusiastic seagulls who believe they're the true kings of this construction site. Congratulations, you're now firmly planted in 2560 BCE. The sun beats down like a bad DJ stuck on one track, hottest summer ever, while you and countless others are getting your daily dose of the Great Pyramid Workout. It's sweaty, it's gritty, and it might take more than one sip of watered-down beer to recover. But somehow, together, you're all channeling your inner Thor as you chip away at the limestone face. And these aren't just any workers. No, they're a wholesome collective of craftsmen who absolutely love their job. Maybe not love in the way you remember loving pizza on a Friday night, but there's a camaraderie here. You might just witness someone casually remarking, "If we take out this block here, it'll align perfectly with a future constellation, and then future tourists will think we're space wizards." It's all in a day's work, really. Now take a moment to savor the delightful aroma of dust mingled with sweat and an undertone of, "What did I have for lunch again?" This ephemeral scent is what motivates them through the long hours, much like the smell of fresh coffee lures you from your cozy bed on a Monday morning. But instead of a warm cup, they have a rusted, but surprisingly articulate, pickaxe that's seen better days. In the distance, the quarry looms, like an oversized birthday cake gone horribly wrong. Workers, more seasoned than the local bar's meat platter, are busily carving out massive chunks of limestone. These aren't just blocks, they're Pyramides' finest creations, perfectly wedged into the imaginations of future generations. Forget hip texts and tweets. These dudes were posting stone gossip on social media long before the advent of hashtags like Limestone Life and Block Party. You might not know it yet, but the logistics of this endeavor weren't entirely haphazard. Picture a rather brilliant chief architect named Imhotep. Yes, the very same guy who seems to have some sort of cosmic luck working in his favor. Instead of searching for stone across the entire land, he cleverly placed the workers right next to the pyramid base. I mean, talk about a logistical win. Why go the extra mile when we can go the extra centimeter instead, he might quip, really living for that efficiency. As you stand there, marveling at this astonishing piece of mischief in ancient logistics, you could swear you overhear someone say, "Why break our backs carting these blocks when we can just dig?" Genius or madness? You'll be the judge of that. But rest assured, they were definitely not getting any overtime pay. Hollowed out wooden sledges for block transport. Guess they didn't have luxury vehicle in their lexicon. Every so often, a commotion breaks out among the workers, like when a coworker brings donuts to the office. "Hey, who took my carving tool?" one demands, looking suspiciously at a guy that just happens to be wearing an overly catchy rock star tunic. As whispers of block theft swirl around, some men turn momentarily into amateur investigators, channeling every mystery movie you've ever seen. You can almost hear the dramatic theme music swell in the background as they point fingers and modestly avoid their own utterly dubious bookkeeping. Of course, some folks decide it's more productive to take 10-minute breaks, swinging their arms like they're summoning the pyramid spirits. They sit in the midday sun, processing their thoughts like a bad reality show confessional. I live for this job, but maybe I should have chosen a career in bricklaying instead. Less sweat. Every strike of the chisel, every lift of the stone blocks sends earnest ripples through the collective psyche of ancient Egypt. Whether it's negative space or positive vibes, the quarry
The true nursery of the pyramid resounds with laughter, interspersed with squawks from nearby birds, not quite convinced humans should be this involved in heavy lifting. A worker might shout, "Give me one more limestone slab, and I swear I'll love it like I love my cat," to which the others nod solemnly, because they understand the deep affection for feline companions. Much like the perpetual motion of constructing pyramids, the love of cats persists through time, even in a world without Instagram. And as this historical humor unfolds, you realize that these ancient builders weren't merely constructing a burial site for a ruler. They were shaping the very identity of a civilization. Imagine having that weight on your shoulders, not just physical stone, but the societal expectations of 1,000 years. If I don't get this block right, my face might end up in the village museum for all eternity. Talk about pressure. As you settle into the sounds of chipping stone and laughter, you may find a certain comfort in the absurdity of it all. Just remember, every great achievement starts with just a small stroke of luck and a lot of heavy lifting. So bask in the hilarity and charm of humanity as you drift off into slumber, realizing that even the Great Pyramid had its not-so-glamorous beginnings. Sweet dreams, where blocks become dreams, and occasional quarrels remain mere whispers on the wind.
Chapter 12. The Blockhead Chronicles. Imagine yourself standing there, the sun beating upon your brow as you hold a copper chisel, trusty, rusty, and no doubt sporting a personality to match. Today, dear listener, you have been cast in the role of an ancient Egyptian stoneworker. Yes, that's right. You're here to carve out blocks of limestone for the Great Pyramid of Giza. And let me tell you, it's not as glamorous as Instagram makes it look. The scene is as picturesque as a bad postcard, shimmering heat waves rising from the ground like a mirage of your Netflix binges, offering a tempting escape from the grind. But no such luck. Instead, you're surrounded by boulders resembling uncooperative cousins refusing to come to the family barbecue. Ever tried to talk sense into a rock? Trust me, it's easier to get a toddler to stop crying than to reason with these Goliaths. As you awkwardly grip your chisel, the vibrations echo loudly, reminding you that, unlike your smartphone, this tool won't be getting any software updates. Every swing is like engaging in a far too enthusiastic game of whack-a-mole, but instead of pop culture icons, you're working overtime to create a piece of history. Just think about it for a moment. Modern humans spend hours staring at screens to create digital art, while you're here attempting to forge a stone monument that will endure longer than your last relationship. Talk about commitment. And then there's the sheer size of those limestone blocks. Now, picture this. You're trying to carve a gigantic square out of the bedrock that feels remarkably like doing your taxes. Incredibly tedious and almost definitely less rewarding. Ever contended with a stubborn piece of furniture that refuses to fit through the door? Multiply that feeling by 100, and you've got yourself a piece of ancient Egyptian stoneworking. Your fellow workers are a lively bunch, each wielding their chisels with varying degrees of finesse. Some swing wildly, as if fighting off invisible bugs, while others take a more calculated approach. You overhear snippets of conversation. If I could just get my hands on a little better tool, I could probably tap dance my way around this stone. Good luck trying that in sandals. The sound of chiseling fills the air. Thunk, 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 like an ancient heavy metal concert, except the crowd is made up of sweaty laborers instead of headbangers. And here's the kicker. Legends claim these pyramids were built by slaves. What a snoozy stereotype. In reality, these workers, like you, are well-fed laborers getting a decent wage and the respect of their peers. They even have time for tea breaks. Can you imagine that? A workday filled with labor, sweat, and tea. Truly, this is the peak of human civilization. If only you could swap that delicious barley beer for a nice iced latte. So, as you swing that chisel, let your mind wonder about the existential questions of life. How much would it take to get someone to quiet their incessant moaning over the lack of lunch? Could you convince the pharaoh that a pyramid made of leftover scraps from pizza night would be just as historic? If food was how slaves were fed, did they also serve hot nachos on the side? Delicious or decadent? Those are questions for future philosophers. Flash forward a bit. If only you could. The day creeps into early afternoon, the sun resolutely climbing higher like an overzealous cockroach. You can feel your muscles reminding you they exist, each tiny ache surprisingly like the after effects of a gym class taught by a particularly sociopathic instructor. Your feet hurt as if you've been wearing flip-flops on a rocky beach just a tad too long. While you carve, your mind drifts once more. You think, wouldn't it be incredible to witness the future? Imagine your stone faces staring back at generations, millennia down the line, at folks arguing about the best kind of cheese. What would they say about you? Ah, yes, this blockhead was the founder of the Cool Boulders Society, where they carved with culinary principles. You chuckle to yourself, shaking your head in bemusement as your hands keep flailing in the continuous cycle of chiseling. And then, right in the midst of this tight routine, a commotion breaks out among the workers, a brawl over stolen chisels like a dramatic soap opera climax. "Who took my trusty tool? You'll pay for this injustice," one fella bellows, brandishing his half-finished slab like a sword. Comedic chaos ensues as workers become amateur detectives, channeling their inner Sherlock Holmes with exaggerated expressions. You even catch a guy sneaking a peek at the nearest cactus, desperately trying to get clues from a suspiciously silent rock. You've finally chipped away enough to see the light at the end of your blocky tunnel. The sun begins to cast long shadows, and, for the first time, you consider how it must feel to actually finish a day's labor without the threat of getting crushed. Imagine going home after a day of both muscle and laughter, sharing tales of peculiar stone squabbles over a bowl of what you can afford stew. This work may not be glamorous or easy, but there's a peculiar camaraderie in the absurdity. So as you lay down that weary chisel, you realize today wasn't just another slice of life in ancient Egypt. It was a rough draft of camaraderie, humor, and history. And perhaps after all that, you were reminded that being part of a monumental workforce isn't just about the weight you lift. It's also about the delightfully interesting stories you carry with you. Sweet dreams, where every chiseling trauma transforms into the fabulosity of the divine.
Chapter 13. The Stone Age Standoff. Let's talk about tools, specifically the wonders of stone quarrying in ancient Egypt. Ah yes, there you stand, amidst a cacophony that would make even the bravest rock band weep with envy. You're gripping a heavy pound wedge, feeling the hefty weight of its ancient glory. So hefty, in fact, that it almost makes your morning coffee feel like a light snack. You can smell the earthy aroma of limestone and sweat mingling in the air, a delightful bouquet reminiscent of a poorly ventilated gym. With steady hands, you position the wedge into a fissure of rock. It's a monumental task, quite literally. Picture this. You carefully inspect the stone, perhaps with a flair reminiscent of a DIY master on a questionable home improvement show. You plunge the wedge into that stubborn crack with all the gusto of someone trying to get the last slice of pizza at a party, the satisfying thunk reverberating through the quarry. Now, let's add a dash of drama. There you are, the ultimate underdog, confronting these gigantic stone blocks, as if they were your long-lost relatives showing up unannounced for dinner. Oh, great, you think. Another one of you? At this moment, all the rivalries from your schoolyard days come rushing back. You take a deep breath, exhaling like one of those yoga experts you think about signing up for. And with pride in your heart, you set your sights on conquering this colossal boulder, like a toddler facing the biggest playground slide. As you continue hammering, you can almost sense the stone's disdain. You think you can just chip away at me? Please, it seems to mock. Just then, you wield your trusty old sledge. Yes, the iconic stoneworker's accessory that looks as ancient as your great-uncle's secret family photo collection. The sound echoes like a comedic cue, booming and clapping each time your sledge meets rock. It's a bit like watching people enthusiastically cheer for a sports team, except your team is a hunk of limestone. With every strike, you can feel vibrations buzzing through your bones, each thunk acting as both a call to labor and a siren song for tea breaks. Speaking of the workday, it's not all mindless swinging. Nope, there's a rhythm to this labor. If you listen closely, it sounds almost like, well, if jazz had a very brick-heavy rendition. You can practically hear your fellow workers chiming in, harmonizing with a few creative curses and banter that could rival a stand-up comedy gig. "Watch this," one worker shouts, taking an exaggerated swing, narrowly missing the wall. But don't worry, walls are not as sensitive about body image as some might think. Ripe laughter erupts among the group, a beautiful cacophony of camaraderie. And with that joy, you can't help but feel like some kind of ancient artisan rock star, albeit one whose fan base is just a bunch of sweaty laborers sharing lunchtime gossip over some rather questionable flatbread. Let's talk about leverage. Oh, the sweet, sweet concept of leverage. You shove that wedge deeper, and suddenly you feel a burst of energy, much like when you find an old snack in the couch cushions. The rock starts to shift, and there it is, dear listener, the moment of triumph. A sound affirming your quest, a crack. Everybody pauses, excitement bubbling up just like the last bubbly drink at a lazy summer picnic. "Did you see that?" someone howls. "That was better than last week's stone lifting contest." You grin at the absurdity of it all. Who needs to watch sports highlights when you have your own live-action drama filled with action shots of stone pounding? Meanwhile, you'd think the rocks had their own social hierarchy, whispering among themselves about the workers' rock-witty banter. As you chip away, imagine this glorious existential question bubbling up. What if we replaced these limestone blocks with something totally absurd, like inflatable flamingos? You'd be able to build a pyramid that could double as a pop-up pool party. You'd be the first architect with inflatable directions, and maybe even turn the Pyramid of Giza into a festival ground where people could frolic on inflatable floats instead of boring old stone. Just imagine the ancient TikToks that could rise out of that. Now you're finally feeling a sense of accomplishment. You've conquered your share of stone, each strike creating a rhythm echoing through time, crafting not just a physical edifice, but tales that would float through generations. Clenching the exhausted wedge in your hand, you glance up at the daunting pyramid structure rising before you. If rocks could laugh, I'd have a solid stand-up routine, you think, chuckling at the absurdity of it all. But before you can bask in your success, a shout interrupts this poetic moment. Who even needs a pyramid when we could be stacking these blocks like sandwiches? Next thing you know, we'll be serving cornerstones with a side of leads. The laughter that follows is infectious, a bright sound illuminating the dense air of the quarry. Perhaps it's the camaraderie in the sweat-soaked air, or the humor in the monotony, but even as the sun begins to dip behind the rising stones, you realize that all this effort is not in vain. You're not just chiseling away, you're crafting a legacy filled with silliness, sweat, and, most importantly, a shared sense of purpose. And just like that, you realize some things really never change, whether you're in a quarry 4,500 years ago or stuck in rush hour traffic today. So let the stone speak. Let the laughs ring true. They're all part of the grand narrative threading through time, reminding you that the world may change, but the beauty of shared struggles, ridiculous dreams, and camaraderie will always remain solid as stone. Chapter 14. The Rockstar Racket of Ancient Quarries. Hey guys, welcome back to our bedtime history escapade, where we're about to dive into something rock solid, yet somehow still softer than that awkward first date you'd rather forget. Tonight, we find ourselves transported back to 2560 BCE, the good old kingdom of Egypt, where they figured out that stacking giant stones could, in fact, create something drastically more impressive than your neighbor's questionable DIY project. But before we start chiseling through the gritty details, let's take a moment. Think about this. Have you ever tried chiseling away at a relationship where neither party wanted to deal with the bricks they threw at each other? Or ever moved a couch so large that you considered using a crane? Join the club. So dim the lights, grab a cozy blanket, and if you feel so inclined, put on the fan, because cooling off in a sweltering quarry might just be the modern-day equivalent of self-care. As we set the stage, ask yourself a few pressing questions. What would you do if your only lunch option was a middle-aged flatbread that smelled more like the quarry than a bakery? Or if tomorrow's outfit consisted of mismatched linen tunics, behavioral fashion statements that would make you the talk of the Nile? And let's not forget, how exactly does one handle a workplace safety meeting when "watch out for falling rocks" is the primary concern? Spoiler alert, there's probably no backup plan. Congratulations, you've just woken up in ancient Egypt, in a dusty quarry where the Great Pyramid of Giza is a work in progress, and where your supervisor, tall and strutting like a modern-day mall cop, believes absolutely no one should take a break unless their limb is actually falling off. The first thing that hits you as the sun rises is the overwhelming sound. It's not the sweet chirping of morning birds, but rather the loud thud of heavy tools meeting stone, echoing through the valley like an off-key choir on a caffeine binge. You squint into the harsh sunlight, and your first thought is, did I accidentally wander into a rock concert or the most arduous episode of a reality show, So You Think You Can Lift? The air is thick with dust, just like your gym bag after a month of forgetfulness. The thick, abrasive particles dance in the sunlight, a gourmet blend of limestone and sweat, creating a perfume that can only be described as eau de hard labor. If this quarry had a Yelp review, it'd probably boast a solid 2 stars. Great views, but the ambiance is nauseatingly gritty. Let's not kid ourselves. Work here is no picnic. Armed with chisels and mallets, like clunky extensions of your own arms, you feel a sense of camaraderie with your fellow laborers as you swing them with all the finesse of a toddler attempting Tai Chi. Imagine the laughter erupting whenever someone misjudges a swing and connects with a nearby rock pile instead. Just like you at the last family gathering, trying to dodge unwanted questions about your life choices. But you soon find the rhythm. Each thunk reverberates through your very bones, kind of like that vibrating phone your friend swears is totally low-key. The song of labor resonates as your fellow quarry workers join in, creating a harmony of sweat, laughter, and one particularly enthusiastic chorus of creative curses directed at the stones that clearly have no interest in cooperating. "Watch me smash this, it'll be a hit," one buddy boasts. And sure enough, as the rock cracks, you can't help but cheer as if you're at the world's most bizarre sports event. Now, let's pause for a moment and reflect on how you ended up here, sweating like a sinner in church. Imagine your great-grandparents recounting their own labor stories. "You think your job is hard? Back in my day, I was a stone chiseler in the blistering sun." Yet, somehow, even amidst the relentless heat,
these ancient laborers managed to cultivate humor out of monotony, their banter bringing fresh air to these dusty confines. And speaking of fresh air, have you ever chased a fleeting moment of relief by downing a suspiciously warm jug of spring water? Grabbing a drink between swings, you can't help but eye the cracked earth and dream of transforming this quarry into something entirely outlandish. What if, instead of blocks of stone, you replaced them with inflatable flamingos? Suddenly, realizing you could be part of the first ever pyramid beach party doesn't seem so preposterous after all. Every time you strike the stone, you feel powerful. With each thunk, you're not just breaking rock. Oh no, you're crafting history, myths, and legends with a humor that could crack even the sternest of pharaohs. A shout rings out through the dust-filled air. Next thing you know, we'll be stacking these blocks like sandwiches. Laughter washes over the worksite, a melodic balm for the weary. Just look up at the towering pyramid. It's standing there, an intimidating behemoth that looms over you, testing your patience and your sanity. Yet, as the day comes to a close, you realize that despite the sweat, soreness, and dust, this wild workplace of absurdity and laughter doesn't just carve stones, it carves community. You chuckle to yourself as you blend into the group, realizing this isn't just about chiseling away at history, but also about the endless stories, jokes, and bonds formed amidst the strife. Who needs fancy entertainment when each day's labor transforms itself into an artisan tapestry, rich with the warm hues of absurdity and legacy? And as the sun dips into the horizon, you're left with a simple truth. Through laughter and labor, both mundane and monumental, shared stories are ultimately the real gems of any age.
Chapter 15. The Overworked Blacksmiths of Ancient Egypt. Hey guys, welcome back to another cozy leg of our journey through time, where we're about to dive into a world even hotter than that one summer when your air conditioning broke down and your only friend was a fan that made more noise than a bumblebee in a blender. Tonight, we're revolving around the sunburned backs of blacksmiths in ancient Egypt, crouched near their roaring fires, forging tools that would make even the most industrious modern-day hot tub installer envious. But before we get all fired up, here's a question. Have you ever tried to make breakfast while you're simultaneously pretending not to burn your house down? Or perhaps you've wondered how it feels to run a marathon on an empty stomach, like waiting for a pizza delivery when you're ravenously hungry. Picture it. Every day these ancient artisans get to pull the longest, hottest shifts without so much as a coffee break or a hipster juice bar on speed dial. Spoiler alert, they don't even have Instagram to post their before and after photos of their workdays. So, settle in, dim the lights, maybe even grab that sleek little sheet mask you bought on sale, and let's explore what the industrious blacksmiths really endured while slamming iron into submission. But first, let me ask, would you trade your comfy desk job for a day wrapped in sizzling leather, drenched in sweat, and battling neon green chunks of copper that, by the way, emit enough heat to fry an egg? Or have you ever thought about what it would be like to ring a bell, the kind that signals the end of the workday, while covered in soot and all your neighbors are congratulating you on another glorious day in historical sweat? Yeah, I thought so. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 2560 BCE in a workshop filled with the symphony of hammer strikes and the sizzle of molten metal. It's hotter than a jalapeno in a sauna, and the air is filled with a plethora of delightful fragrances. if you consider the mingling of human sweat, charred wood, and the tantalizing scent of sizzling metal delightful. Think of it as a rougher, less gourmet version of a modern-day barbecue. As you look around, you can see blacksmiths strutting their stuff with chisels and mallets as if they're the rock stars of the workshop. They're equipped with enough fire and fury to rival a dragon, except these dragons are more likely to complain about the heat than breathe fire. Seriously, you wonder how one person can produce such a spectacular amount of sweat while hammering on hot metal, and yet they still manage to twirl their mustaches like they just won a silent film in the 1920s. Every thwack of the hammer against the anvil reverberates through your soul, hitting more notes than a boisterous choir at a family reunion. You can practically hear the hissing of the molten copper, like a gossipy neighbor spilling tea at a potluck. It's like being in the world's most intense episode of Chopped, where the secret ingredient is, you guessed it, sweat and a little bit of blood, with a hint of stubbornness, because no one wants to back down from the heat of history. And speaking of history, let's just clarify. The misconception that pyramids were built by aliens or overworked slaves? Yes, well, simply isn't true. In reality, the ancient Egyptians had a dedicated workforce of skilled, healthier laborers who probably had more elbow grease than your high school gym teacher ever requested. They were like the baristas of the architectural world, serving up beautifully crafted blocks with more finesse than your favorite latte art. Have you ever crossed paths with someone trying to build a simple IKEA shelf, cursing at the instructions written in a language that looks strangely like hieroglyphics, while desperately trying to recall if you need a tiny screwdriver or just a degree in ancient engineering? It's that sort of vibe, except the blacksmiths here are literally hammering out the very building blocks of civilization, while trying desperately to avoid any run-ins with malfunctioning tools. Spoiler, they're probably not going to help each other with those IKEA instructions. As you delve further into the chaos and camaraderie, you see one craftsman named K.M. Moot, who has taken it upon himself to create the best chisels anyone has ever seen. Every swing of his hammer is accompanied by comedic remarks like, "This one's going to be the Giza of all chisels." Laughter ensues, echoing off the walls like a melody composed by the goddess of humor herself. Just picture it, a bunch of blacksmiths sweating buckets, discussing who will create the best tools, drinking a warm concoction that bears an uncanny resemblance to faded chocolate milk, with the occasional meandering fly cheering them on. Now, let's chisel through some hard truths. Workdays start early and end late, and lunch breaks are more of a suggestion than a rule. If your idea of a snack is a handful of dried figs someone forgot about last season, then congratulations, you're officially an ancient Egyptian blacksmith. What's more, when your supervisor isn't yelling, "Keep hammering away," he's probably performing a delicate balancing act, trying to maintain a stern face while deciding which day to let everyone leave early for the annual Keep Calm and Forge On festival. As the sun dips lower in the sky and work mellows down, it's hard not to laugh with your newfound comrades. No one is here just to labor in silence. They're building something greater than mere stones. They're fashioning bonds, humor, and some pretty hilarious stories destined to echo through eternity. So when you find yourself enduring yet another day in this heated sanctuary, just remember, you're not just chiseling stone, you're shaping the laughter and legacy of ancient Egypt. And as you settle in for the night, snug and perhaps a little soot-covered, you realize While others have reshaped forms of history, you've become part of the great tapestry woven from sweat, determination, and yes, even a little heartfelt giggle amidst the chaos. After all, nothing says ancient blacksmith like a perfectly forged chisel and a tale that always ends in laughter. Now, how's that for shaping history? Chapter 16: The Rock-Solid Workforce of Egypt. Hey guys, welcome back to our cozy time-traveling adventure. Tonight, we take a leisurely stroll through the Egyptian desert, where the sun blares down hotter than your best friend's opinions on kale. Get ready, because we're diving deep into the lives of the hard-working laborers who chiseled away at stones to create, drumroll please, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Spoiler alert, no, they weren't magically summoned by aliens with a penchant for pyramids, nor were they mere slaves. So please, buckle your seatbelts and wear a wide-brimmed hat made of pure curiosity, because we're about to shimmy into ancient Egypt around 2560 BCE. But before we dig into the grit and glamour of our rock-chiseling friends, let me gently remind you, give a friendly nod to that like button. Subscribe if you think we're cooler than a cucumber in a jackpot of watermelons. And drop a comment below just to let us know you're alive and not being trapped in a sarcophagus. Now, grab your favorite sleeping blanket, crank that fan to hurricane, and let me ask you some thought-provoking questions. Ever wondered how many chisels it takes to build a pyramid? Or what happens when you forget your lunch on a day when you're hammered into a sweaty spiral of hard labor? What about the weird camaraderie that emerges when you're all sweating together in the scorching heat while secretly competing over who has the toughest calluses? Or how it feels to watch a coworker drop a huge block of limestone on their foot and still insist they're fine, really. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 2560 BCE in a workshop bustling with energy. And let me tell you, it's not a yoga retreat. Right off the bat, the air is thick with the scent of sweat, limestone dust, and just a hint of burning incense. Imagine the excited chatter that fills the air, punctuated by the clink, clink, clink of chiseling into stone. It's as if you've strolled into a musical where every note is surprisingly rhythmic. But if the cast breaks into song, it's probably about how they should have packed more water today. The laborers around you wear sun-beaten skin and expressions that radiate a mix of determination and sheer exhaustion. They remind you of those modern gym-goers who act like they've just run a half marathon after merely rearranging their furniture. Yet, beneath that weary exterior lies a community bound by humor and the shared struggle of laboring for the pharaohs. There's Ipu, who just nicknamed his chiseling tool Chiselbert, because apparently, who doesn't want to anthropomorphize stone implements? Where can you find a more eclectic mix of muscle and merriment? Each swing of the hammer is accompanied by a newfound chant, a battle cry of sorts. More lime, less wine. It's practically a motivational poster waiting to happen, and you find yourself echoing it as you nod along. What do you know about teamwork? Because here, when someone drops a block or nearly smashes a toe, they erupt into laughter rather than panic, as if they've just bombed their dance routine at a middle school talent show. And speaking of teamwork, these are not the kind of guys to skimp on safety. Forget hard hats. They're equipped with sheer determination, and occasionally an idea that someone's hat can double as a makeshift first aid kit. With each blow of the hammer, the sweat rolls down faces like beads on an ancient abacus.
You can taste the grit in the air. Think less flavored bubble tea and more dusty lemon granola bar with a side of ambition. While they work, just imagine the lively banter around them. Did you hear about that guy who thought he could fashion a chair out of a limestone block? Let's just say it didn't end well. Laughter echoes like the wind through a canyon, a comforting sound amidst the grueling work that could rival your roommate's attempts at karaoke. But it's not all fun and games. There's a rhythm that accompanies their toil, one that swells and tumbles like a wave crashing on the shore. You'd think, what's it like smashing rocks all day? But the real question is, how many rocks can one sweat-stained laborer misplace before calling it a day? Then, just when you're ready to doze off into a sunbeam-fueled slumber, you're interrupted by the shrill shout of the overseer. He's a well-built chap who could easily land a gig as a human alarm clock, loud and obnoxious. Let's keep those chisels sharp and our backs straighter. Do you want your bones to be our next sculpture? He means that literally. As the day wears on, the camaraderie flourishes through ridiculous shenanigans. A laborer attempts to impress a fellow worker by spinning a limestone block above his head, only to realize that it's slightly heavier than it looks. Thud! Down it goes, and ear-piercing laughter rings out as he sheepishly retrieves the rock, not quite grasping the safer techniques they've spent the day discussing. Mental notes are made. All hail the glory of gravity. So, when the sun dips behind the horizon, the workers shuffle back to their homes, visibly worn out, some fashioning themselves makeshift sandals that could embarrass even the worst modern flip-flops. As you nod off to sleep, wrapped in the laughter and camaraderie of these ancient craftsmen, try to imagine all the stories shared over dinner. Tonight's menu? A delightful serving of stories, camaraderie, and a hefty portion of, remember when you tried to lift that limestone block? In the heart of Egypt, they aren't just building pyramids, they're sculpting the very essence of what it means to work hard with comrades beside you, often exchanging laughter mixed with sweat, perhaps like trying to gulp down ice water swiftly while running a marathon. You might just be surprised at how hilariously human history can be amid all that stone and sand. Chapter 17. The Heavy Lifting of the Ages. Hey guys, welcome back to the sun-baked canvas of ancient Egypt. Tonight, we're shimmying out to the arid desert landscape where the sand dances like no one's watching and the sun blares down like a relentless DJ spinning the hottest track. We join a determined crew of laborers hauling multi-ton limestone blocks on wooden sledges, mighty behemoths of stone destined to become part of the Great Pyramid of Giza, completed around 2560 BCE. Spoiler alert, Brad Pitt didn't swing by to help, and no, there were no aliens involved, despite what conspiracy theorists might whisper into their nachos during movie marathons. But before we get buried under a pyramid of facts and absurdity, let's take a moment to appreciate how much weight we're dealing with here. Certainly more than your typical grocery haul on a Monday morning when you thought you could get by without a list. So, why not be a friendly neighbor and tap that like button, subscribe if you think we're smoother than Egyptian cotton, and drop a comment below about the worst thing you've ever dropped on your toes. Trust me, we'll be comparing stone-to-foot disaster stories later. Now, take a deep breath, dim those lights, and let your body melt into a cozy position. You're gonna need to be comfortable for this ride. Ever wondered what sort of mischief happened in the heat of stone transportation? Or what happens when someone trips mid-hauling a massive block and doesn't land gracefully, sending everyone into a fit of giggles rather than panic? How about the question, is sweating in the blistering heat a form of cardio? Because trust me, these laborers are basically training for ancient Egypt's version of the Olympics, the who can lift a rock and not die of heat stroke games. And what about casual chit-chat when you're hauling a piece of rock heavier than your in-laws' expectations? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 2560 BCE, dressed in a linen tunic that feels like it was woven by anxious moths wondering how they got this job in the first place. The blazing sun greets you like a relentless hug as you find yourself on a busy construction site, sweaty and chaotic, where everyone seems to have given up their right to personal space. The command, "Get back to pushing that rock," has never felt so very real. With the clanking sounds of wooden sledges dragging through the sand, think about that feeling of pulling a suitcase with a broken wheel through the airport. It's not just a minor inconvenience, it's a whole endeavor. The scent of dried sweat mingles with coarse limestone dust, creating an aroma that's less fresh and breezy and more your socks after a 2-day festival. Every breath in this sandy theater is an energetic reminder that nothing good comes without a little bit of unpleasantness. Just ask anyone trying to assemble IKEA furniture. As you sift through the crowd,
camaraderie feels palpable. There's Khufu, a burly fellow whose nickname you can't quite repeat here because it involves a pun that might land them in ancient Egyptian HR. Khufu's about to demonstrate an ancient Egyptian labor skill, the art of gently nudging someone who just got a star-ranking sand divot in their eye while attempting to adjust a block's position. All the while, you chuckle quietly, captivated by the bizarre yet endearing way they handle it. One lad jokingly claims he'll start a new trend with sand-spiced allergies. Let's not forget the timeless thrill of competition. Imagine teams vying for best lifting technique, which mostly consists of one guy lifting with pride while the others organize commentary like an ancient live sports show. Watch as he showcases the don't break your back technique. Oh, and here comes the classic, this block is too heavy, I guess I'll just feel bad about my life instead maneuver. As the group begins to hoist another colossal block, the precarious task is punctuated by laughter and the occasional whoops as toes are nearly crushed. Someone, likely a prankster, just yelped, "Careful with that one! Did you see what happened last week?" And as eyes dart toward a very bruised toe of a laborer, you wonder how comedic timing transcends time and space. Human folly could be an art form in this era, just like it is today, when you forget that trying to highlight your hair at home can result in an unexpected shade of, oops, wrong aisle at the grocery store. But it's not just humor in a bustling city. It's sheer determination that makes this work worthwhile. These laborers are not slaves, but skilled workers earning their bread through honest sweat, often debating whose granite is better while snacking on loaves of bread left behind by a nearby bakery. Ever tried finding the right bread for your sandwich while worrying someone might challenge you to a rock-off? Hey, pass the flatbread. I might need a snack to fuel this Herculean feat. Now, the overseer starts pacing, his staff held high like a battle standard of productivity. Less chatting and more hauling, folks.
The king expects his pyramid before lunchtime. And somewhere in the back, you hear someone mutter, "And here I thought we were just modeling for a giant stone wedding cake." As the sun slowly begins to dip, more laughter erupts. Whoa! Somebody shouldn't have had that last fig. Now a feat of balance ensues as a laborer attempts to ride the block like a horse. Spoiler alert, the horse is heavy and the dismount is not graceful. It's as if the entire group collectively gasped, and the foreman shakes his head while smirking, a classic move of disappointment mixed with tiny victories. When the day draws to a close and the workers shuffle back to their homes, they're not just carrying stones, they're cradling stories, camaraderie, and the promise of tomorrow. Tonight, as you drift off back to your comfortable limb, you may find yourself lingering in laughter, toasting to the wisdom of hard-earned humor. Little do you know, tomorrow will be just another day of stone flinging and the uproarious quest for the perfect backstretch, right there under the watchful eyes of the saffron sun. Chapter 18. Heavy Lifting and Light Humor. Hey guys, welcome back to the captivating tapestry of ancient Egypt. Tonight, we step gingerly into a sun-soaked world where even the shadows are doing their best to dodge the heat. Picture this, the Great Pyramid of Giza looming in the backdrop, a marvel built not just on ambition, but also on a fair share of sweat, giggles, and pyramids worth of problem solving. You may want to adjust your pillows, grab a drink of water, and prepare for a journey filled with both giggles and granite. Now, before we dig deeper than a pharaoh's burial chamber, take a moment. Have you ever wondered how you'd feel if you suddenly found yourself lifting stones heavier than your entire living room furniture, without the benefit of a pizza break? Or what would happen if you mistakenly stepped on a rogue sand dune, slipping and turning your pyramid mission into a comedic disaster video? Or perhaps you've pondered the logistics of negotiating the lightweight blocks while trying not to cause a sandstorm of exasperation and maybe a side of existential questioning. All these questions dance in your mind as you find yourself subliminally caught in the rhythms of life in ancient Egypt. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 2560 BCE, ready to embrace your new role among a collection of hardy workers hauling blocks that weigh more than a hippo on a diet of denial. The sun greets you with a warmth that feels more like a firm hug from a particularly enthusiastic uncle. You open your eyes to a bustling construction site filled with chatter, laughter, and barely contained chaos. It's a veritable circus, if circuses were filled with stone, sweat, and the occasional smack to the toes. Each morning begins with the magnificent sound of wooden sledges creaking, just like your knees after a particularly rigorous yoga class. As you stand among your fellow laborers, you might catch a glimpse of some crafty soul attempting to yank a block that seems to have taken a personal vendetta against modern physics. It's like watching your friend trying to lift their own weight at the gym, effortful and slightly terrifying. Now, imagine the scene, teams of strongmen on terrain resembling a track and field event, except the only medals to be won are made of acacia wood and bragging rights. The challenges are fierce. Who knew moving a colossal limestone block could be so intricate? It's not just heavy lifting, it's a whole ancient Olympic sport in the making. As sweat drips into your eyes, you take a moment to admire those noble blocks, a sight that makes you appreciate how much engineering God might have had to consider before creating anything heavier than feather pillows. The laborers around you joke cheerfully, debating the merits of having a block with just the right sound
when dropped. It's all about the thud, one insists, while you're left pondering the last time you dropped your phone. Was it more dramatic? More tragic? Who can say for sure? Now, let's talk about how these hefty blocks are moved. No cranes, no forklifts, just the sheer will and some makeshift humor. You could say the laborers are utilizing a very advanced technique, the ancient Egyptian equivalent of push it till you make it. It's a little like that moment you decide to help a friend move furniture for pizza and regret not bringing your heavier duty backup. Yet, even amid the mayhem, critical philosophical questions arise. What are the chances someone miscalculates their grip and sends a block plopping right onto a neighboring worker's toes? Quite high, I assure you. One poor lad just might have lost the title of most likely to get shocked by stone after an unfortunate incident involving a poorly timed giggle. They're likely to be dubbed the Great Toe Casualty, a legend passed down through stone-lifting lore, reminiscent of your own unfortunate moments at family gatherings when someone yelps for no good reason. As the sun climbs higher and the heat turns oppressive, the overseer, bedecked in grand linen, struts into the scene, wielding a staff that looks more like a prop from a failed comedy show. "Less chatter, more hauling, folks," he barks, and you, caught between wanting to roll your eyes and demonstrating how great you are at teamwork, pick up your block once again. Amidst the heavy lifting, moments of levity bubble to the surface like unexpected hiccups. One laborer winks at you while dramatically pretending to struggle under the weight of a small stone. "This one must weigh a ton. Call my chiropractor." His theatrical flailing prompts laughter that ricochets off the walls, breaking the tension like a refreshing breeze on a stifling day. Just when you think you've seen it all, one enthusiastic laborer decides to take a leap of comedic faith. He boldly pretends to ride a block like it's an ancient chariot. Spoiler alert, the block has other plans. The dismount resembles a slow-motion dream that doesn't quite go as imagined. Gasps echo through the crew, followed by laughter, punctuated by light-hearted banter about terrible rides and block parties gone wrong. As twilight descends like a gentle wraparound blanket, laborers finish hauling their stones, a veritable stone ballet, while paths to temporary glory unfold between deafening laughter and tiring muscles. You find yourself shuffling home, not merely a worker, but part of something profoundly human. The proverbial sharing of burdens, tales, and making light of all that is ultimately heavy. Tonight, as you lay your head down, drifting off to ethereal dreams, remember this. Whether you're hoisting stone or just trying not to drop your phone for the third time this week, life is often about the burdens we carry and the laughter that makes it all worth it.
There's magic in the absurdity of toil. And perhaps, just perhaps, you'll find
some echoes of those ancient laborers guiding your dreams as they strutted their stuff right there in the golden sands of Giza. Chapter 19: Sledge Life and Sandstorm Shenanigans. Welcome back, my sandy-footed friends. Tonight we dive deeper into the glorious chaos of ancient Egypt, where sledge pulling is the most dangerous sport since competitive noodle wrestling. Picture this: teams of chiseled workers, muscles like granite, all gathered around wooden sledges that could easily double as a cruise ship for ants. Together, they're straining, laughing, and perhaps contemplating life choices while moving an immovable object, and all without so much as a snack break. Now, relax your shoulders, because I can almost hear you tensing up at the thought of heavy lifting. The only thing you should be lifting is your pillow, preferably one filled with feathers, not ancient limestone. As you lean in, allow me to ask, have you ever thought about how weird it must feel to pull a block so heavy that you could build your own personal apartment inside it? Or considered, what's worse, losing your grip and sending it crashing down, or risking a toe crush that would make you the ancient equivalent of a meme? What's worse, losing your dignity or watching the block roll over your buddy and turning him into a very unhappy pancake? I bet ancient Egyptians had quite the sense of humor, especially when they were recalling hilarious mishaps like that over a dinner made mostly of lentils and regrets. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 2560 BCE, surrounded by a blazing sun that feels like it's auditioning for a less than pleasant show about the Great Overheating. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands tall behind you, a structure that, much like your New Year's resolution to exercise, is taking a whole lot more effort than anticipated. As you shake the sleep from your eyes, you find yourself neck deep in the ancient world's cringiest construction site. The smell of sweat, sand, and just a hint of unidentifiable lunches wafts through the air, mingling together like a celestial joke about work-life balance. As you step onto the shifting sands and precast concrete desert version of quicksand, sacred to the ancient Egyptians, you hear the distinct creaking of wooden sledges, each sound like a loud protest against the natural order of, how on earth are we going to pull this? Imagine this scene. Dozens of men stand in perfect harmony, though chaos is ever present. They grasp thick ropes as if they're auditioning for a tug-of-war championship league. With synchronized grunts that could rival your neighbor's cheerful 5 a.m. workout routine, they pull stubborn blocks across the sandy landscape. You could say they were experiencing what we call modern-day team building, minus the motivational posters and overpriced team lunches. But here's the kicker. Once in a while, someone sneezes, and for an instant, the whole operation turns into a slapstick routine. Achoo! Echoed down the line like a foghorn, causing temporary pandemonium. You can almost picture that. Heavy block teetering, and in a bizarre moment of solidarity, everyone lurches backward, like a synchronized dance routine gone horrifically wrong. Who knew the pyramids would have such a comedic flair? Now, let's delve into the striking aesthetics of those blocks. All jagged and rough-edged, like that one friend in your life
who feels the need to wear artsy clothing during your perfectly normal coffee shop outing. Each block glistens under the sun, almost taunting you to come and lift, while whispering sweet catcalls like, "You can't handle me. Just give up and embrace your couch." Oh, the mental battles that ensue. As the laborers heave and holler, jovial banter floats along with clouds of dust. Hey, if you drop that, you'll need a sand dollar much better than the ones lying around here. They weave in and out of puns like expert linguists, while someone dramatically pretends to wobble under the stone, swaying to and fro as though in a Broadway performance. Now, picture this oversight. While everyone's pulling, one mischievous soul decides to play the ultimate prank. With a bright smile, he pretends to struggle, dramatically clutching his back, only to have that back betrayed by a smart aleck smirk. Because this stone's not going anywhere without at least a half-hearted comedic effort. But it's not all fun and games. The overseer, a grand figure draped in light linens that must have felt like wearing a generous slice of toast, interrupts the shenanigans with a holler designed to pierce the very heavens. "Less chit-chat, more hauling," he barks, to which he receives a comical, though surprisingly effective, response. Laughter, followed by a collective exhale as every worker returns to his grimace of effort, punctuated by playful grunts. It's almost like a bizarre symphony of sound, a blend of whistles, laughs, and the sound of countless old sandals slapping against the sandy floor. As the sun begins to dip behind the horizon, the team wraps up their day's work. An arduous balancing act, mind you, between exhaustion and the unbearable urge to nap. But amid all this, camaraderie springs to life like a quick-drying clay pot. You squeeze through the daylight, feeling every ounce of the collective weight lifted, not just in the form of massive limestone blocks, but in the shared laughter of those grinning faces, all caught in the absurd squabbles of a day unlike any other. So, as you lay your head down tonight, drifting off to sleep, remember this. Whether you're hoisting heavy stones or just navigating the absurdities of modern life, laughter has an uncanny ability to lighten even the heaviest of burdens. And who knows, maybe the ancient Egyptians were onto something. Perhaps humor really is the best form of labor aid, or at least a solid excuse for that sand stuck in your shoes.
Chapter 20. Sledge Trouble and Sand Chronicles. Now that you've settled in, let's continue our adventure through the sun-baked glory of ancient Egypt. We've got some more mildly interesting spectacles in store, guaranteed to keep you awake and yet somehow send you into dreamland. Just imagine, tonight we're welcoming the ticking clock of ingenuity, where every sledge is like a bumpy little roller coaster ride on the shifting sands, minus safety bars and a thrilling soundtrack. Speaking of sledge trouble, let's get a clearer picture of the sledge situation. Picture this: a wooden contraption resembling a haphazard picnic table on steroids, its shiny, sun-drenched surface practically begging for a polite hello while sinking into the loose sands. Yes, folks, this isn't merely a matter of heavier than your ex's emotional baggage blocks. It's a dazzlingly brilliant case of friction struggling to be friends with gravity. Here's the scene. You've got a sledge looking less like a miracle of construction and more like a "please, not today" meme. Each time the laborers tug at those ropes, the poor sledge sinks into the sand like an overcooked marshmallow at a campfire. And you thought your shoes got stuck in mud at the last outdoor wedding? Child's play. This is prime Egyptian sand trap real estate. The sledge behaves like it's auditioning for the part of the world's least helpful sand anchor. Ah, the suspense. Can you imagine being one of those laborers braving that relentless, dry vapor of the desert? Your nostrils filled with the unshakable essence of sand. Probably the kind of flavor you'd expect from a child's art project gone horribly wrong, or a parched cactus trying to make conversation. Would you like a little bit of sand with that limestone block? Not quite the recipe for a 5-star meal. As these brave souls labor on, you can almost hear their muffled complaints, like a comedic soundtrack of sweat, desperation, and a dash of existential dread. Hey, can I get a raise, or at least a lifetime supply of sunscreen? They might quip, gazing longingly into the horizon as the sun beats down with a vengeance, like a glowering grandmother constantly reminding you about your bad decisions in life. So there's the sledge, sweaty hands, and perhaps a few uninspired dad jokes swirling in the air. The grand overseer, in his flowing linen getup, can really bring the dramatic flair. Picture him perched like a regal chicken on a fence, squawking out orders as if he were directing a 70s TV show about how to role-play egregious upper management practices. Less dragging, more hauling, gentlemen. We're not here to practice our sledge yoga. But hold on, because the plot thickens. To combat the sand's resistance and the sledge's tendency to take unexpected vacations into the depths of despair, genius strikes, like lightning on a particularly stormy day. An ingenious solution
Bubbles up from the sweaty brows of our weary heroes. The addition of water. That's right. A little sprinkle right where the heavy sledge meets the sand creates a miraculous, sludgy slip and slide. This isn't simply hauling. This is what we, in modern parlance, call optimization. Just picture it. The crew gathers around, debating the merits of an on-site water feature versus grumpy labor. Hey, if we gather just enough of those pesky little water buckets, we might just glide to our dreams. And glide they do, like they're the very first ice skaters on a warm, sandy surface. The sledge goes from a begrudging mollusk to an unexpected race car. It's like someone replaced the heavy limestone with the spirits of 100 caffeinated kangaroos. Suddenly, those grunts transform into joyful chants as the sledge glides smoothly, albeit with the occasional hiccup. "Whee!" grunts the guy on the end, managing to trip over a nearby sand dune just as the overseer strides by. The overseer throws a glance that says, "I disapprove, and I still want my ice cream." Yet amid all the bravado, one wise laborer remarks, "You know, friends, maybe we should just try to draft a sand lawsuit against this sledge. It's not a fair game when it keeps sinking like your hopes of a nap." Laughter erupts, reverberating across the sands, a joyous symphony of camaraderie. And as this comical ballet of sand and sledge continues, you can't help but chuckle at the sheer absurdity of it all. The Great Pyramid
is still looming in the background, a silent locker room equipped with grandeur and annoyance, but also standing witness to the all-too-human moments of awkwardness and laughter. So, as you nestle into your comfortable space and feel the weight of the day gently lifting, remember those ancient souls battling against the grains of sand on that extraordinary journey. Find solace in humor, for just like those ancient laborers, even in the heavyweight struggles of life, we've always got the power of laughter to carry us through. And who knows, maybe the next time you're pulling a stubborn suitcase through an airport to catch your flight, you'll channel your ancient Egyptian forebears, improvise with a little water, and glide right on through. Chapter 21. Aquatic Innovations and Sledge Triumphs. Now that you're comfortably nestled in your cozy spot, preferably not on a wooden sledge, let's dive into the whimsical world of ancient Egyptian ingenuity. Specifically, how a little bit of water made the rather large task of pyramid building just a tad bit less monumental. And who knew that a journey into the past would include lessons in both comedy and hydration? Picture this: a laborer, quite possibly sporting an impressive headdress that screams, "I woke up like this," holding a jar above his head like a trophy from a long-forgotten wrestling match. Sweat beads trickle down his temples as he leans in to pour water precisely onto the ground in front of the sledge runners, a moment akin to pouring the final layer of icing on a cake. But this isn't just any cake. It's a colossal, stone-heavy pyramid cake waiting for its finishing touch. As the cool water splashes onto the golden sandy expanse, it's less like the tranquil sounds of a soothing stream and more like the chaotic splat of a rogue water balloon landing too close to a group of unsuspecting friends. The ground, once as uncompromising as your last 3 attempts to achieve work-life balance, transforms before our very eyes. Just add water, he might say, channeling his inner infomercial star, for an Egyptian twist on friction reduction. Ah, friction, the sworn enemy of every laborer who has ever attempted to move anything heavier than their cat. That relentless force that makes every attempt at hauling limestone feel like a sitcom blooper reel. Blocks getting stuck, laborers tripping, and a robust collection of unfit for public access grumbling. But now, thanks to our clever friend and his trusty jar, we have a miraculous sledge slip and slide, transforming our hero's ordeal into a more pleasant playdate with physics. Imagine the sound, a soft squelch as the wet sand gives way, suddenly accommodating the weight of the sledge as if it were whispering sweet nothings. Come on, darling, let's glide. The laborers, armed with ropes and equipped with confidence, possibly bolstered by the sun's relentless encouragement, begin their choreographed ballet of labor. Sledge, sand, and water, the trio that could have starred in its own tragic romance. As the sledge glides forward effortlessly on its newly hydrated path, you might find yourself thinking about your own sad attempts at lugging heavy groceries from your car up 3 flights of stairs. If only I could sprinkle water along the sidewalk and make the trek easier, you muse, realizing that soggy cereal might not yield the same results. The scene is comical, water bubbling from the jar like a magic potion, transforming the grueling weight-hauling session into an oddly exhilarating water slide experience. "Whee!" one laborer exclaims as he unexpectedly stumbles forward, sending the sluggish sledge into a delightful clip. It's like the Great Pyramid of Giza has just been transformed into an ancient slip and slide. If only Instagram had existed back then, the hashtags would surely trend. Sledge Life, Limestone Joyride. In the midst of this sandy spectacle, the overseer casts a skeptical glance. Picture him, tall and imposing, striking a pose that says he's far too important for mere water fights. Less giggling, more hauling. We're building a monument, not a beach resort. His ability to frown while wearing an eye-roll-worthy expression should win awards. But as the crew celebrates their newfound momentum, it's impossible to ignore the laughter bubbling up from an unexpected source, the laborers themselves. They banter back and forth between stages of hauling, absorbing the miraculousness that they can now move stones with the grace of a gazelle, assuming gazelles had rope and a penchant for heavy lifting. Can you imagine if we had our own ice cream booth here? One laughs. We'd be kings. The comedic chaos continues. A guy, let's call him Hatshepsut, to keep things historically accurate and a tad sassy, yells out mid-haul, "Who needs aliens when you can just add water?" The group erupts, a symphony of cackles transforming the dunes into a makeshift comedy club. The overseer can only shake his head, perhaps wondering what he'd give for a beach day, or at least a nice coconut drink. As the day stretches on, you can envision the sledge slipping and sailing, gentle laughter floating in the air. As night falls, they pause, triumphantly surveying the nearly completed pyramid. It's a marvel of science, teamwork, and a splash of humor. In a land where sweat and toil are the driving forces behind the construction of legendary wonders, even the simplest of elements, one little jar of water, can turn labor into a party. So the next time you find yourself at the grocery store, wrestling with a bag of frozen peas, remember, just add a little water, and don't be afraid to giggle at the absurdities of life. After all, beneath the solemn grandeur of the Great Pyramid lies a history rich in laughter, fumbles, and moments that remind us that even the most Herculean tasks can be made splendidly silly, if only you let the good times, and perhaps a bit of H2O, roll.
Chapter 22. The Hauling Harmonies of Labor. Now that we've set the stage for laughter and hydration, let's transport ourselves to the dusty lands of ancient Egypt. Congratulations! You've just woken up around 2560 BCE in the land of sunburnt tourists. Oh wait, those are just the workers easing stones into place for the Great Pyramid of Giza. Picture yourself amongst a team of laborers dressed in linen garments that may or may not have seen a friendly washer in a while. As dawn breaks, the air is thick with grit and determination, but also a light sprinkling of absurdity. You're surrounded by a cacophony that sounds like a combination of a spirited chant and a slightly off-key karaoke rendition of What a Wonderful World. Laborers line up, ropes in hand, focused on moving massive limestone blocks, because who doesn't like a little spontaneous strength training before breakfast? Ready, team? Someone bellows, raising a makeshift baton. The laborers respond with an enthusiastic cheer, a mix of yes and wait, what are we lifting again? The overseer, sporting a headdress that practically screams serious business, stands at the ready to unleash a motivational speech, which mostly consists of more pulling, less chit-chat. Just imagine trying to lift a 2,500-pound rock
while maintaining an inner zen as your brain battles distractions like a fly buzzing around your head at a barbecue. You take your position in line as the chant begins, a rhythmic mantra of moves to sync your heaving heart with the monumental task ahead. Ha-za, ha-za. A little more cadence pops in than you'd expect. Is that someone adding jazz hands? You chime in, pulling with all your might, thoroughly convinced you can rival a chorus line from an ancient Egyptian musical. And there it is, the power of synchronized hauling. Who knew it could be this comically entertaining? As the weight barely budges, you start to sweat profusely, a not-so-subtle reminder that you're definitely not on vacation. Every muscle in your body, including those you didn't know existed, cries out for a break. Hey, is anyone else feeling like we should have just built the pyramid on top of a hill? You ponder, wishing for a smooth ride instead of unyielding sand. Although lifting this rock feels like trying to move a stubborn boulder after a Tuesday night pizza binge, the camaraderie is something to behold. With each pull, you discover a few key things about team dynamics. There's always one guy, let's name him Ramsey, who has entirely too much pep in his step. Let's go, crew! We can do this! He's the type who brings homemade granola bars to the labor site, probably offering pieces while everyone else is just trying to breathe without sounding like they're auditioning for a whale documentary. Ramsey, might want to save that for later, you think, eyeing the limestone.
Suspiciously, hoping it doesn't magically turn into a loaf of bread after all this pulling. Meanwhile, the chant continues, morphed into something downright amusing as the work begins to transcend the labor. Ha-za, lifting and laughing, lifting and laughing. Energetic as a hyperactive camel, you might as well be auditioning for a historical comedy. Try explaining that to future archaeologists. Suddenly, a fellow laborer trips over a loose stone. With a topsy-turvy flourish, he lands dramatically in front of the sledge, elegantly, a fall that would earn him points in Olympic gymnastics, yet throws everyone off balance. Best stunt of the year goes to declarations of not being a stone. This unforeseen comedy act nearly derails your pulling rhythm, leading to absolute chaos as everyone tries to stifle a laugh while maintaining the illusion of serious effort. Good luck with that, as the overseer sweeps in, arms crossed, and a frown etched upon his face that could curdle fresh milk. Less fooling around, more lifting, he demands. But you can still hear in the back of your mind the sounds of ha-za with a giggle. The chants flutter back, catching like a mischievous breeze, seamlessly integrating laughter into the heavy-lifting conundrum. Let's be honest, that pyramid isn't going anywhere without a bit of finesse and fun. As the day rolls on, you're relieved to discover someone has taken the initiative to dust off the evening's plans. Sounds like there's a symposium discussing how to design a pyramid without going completely crazy on the horizon. Spoiler alert, it involves fewer stones and more snacks. As the sun dips down low behind the Great Pyramid, the sight of the majestic structure bathed in a warm orange hue
replaces your earlier fatigue with a sense of achievement. You know, you muse, our calculated chaos and teamwork didn't turn out so bad after all. Life as a laborer during pyramid construction is certainly no walk in the park. It's more of a synchronized stone shuffle, a bit like a marathon of absurdity wrapped in ancient hardship. Who knew you could achieve greatness while chiseling history with a hearty laugh? So, as you tuck into a corner of the sand, happily giggling at the events of the day, remember, sometimes all you need is camaraderie, a pinch of humor, and a commitment to harnessing the absurdity of life. It essentially turns your workplace into a sweat-drenched sitcom with pyramids as the setting. Chapter 23. The Stone Transport Olympics. Let's talk about a little something called teamwork. Not the kind that involves standing in awkward circles for motivational speeches, but the kind that can hoist entire blocks of limestone up sand dunes and construct a pyramid that would eventually confuse generations into thinking aliens were involved. Welcome to the Great Pyramid's construction site, or, as we like to call it, the Stone Transport Olympics. Now, picture it. You wake up in ancient Egypt, and your first thought isn't, "Where's my morning coffee?" No, it's more like, "How much limestone am I lifting today?" You're clad in your finest linen attire, which feels slightly more like a cozy potato sack than high fashion. Your first task? Getting a group of suspiciously underfed individuals to transform into a highly coordinated assembly line of huffing, puffing, and occasionally grunting choral arrangements. Progress reports suggest that the only thing moving faster than the stones is the laughter escaping between labors. Each day starts with a sort of pep rally led by the job site's overly enthusiastic supervisor, who probably invented the phrase, "more grit than grace." He stands before a group of stone haulers, waving his arms like he's auditioning for a spot as an Egyptian windmill. "All right, my beautiful stone wrestlers," he shouts with an excitement commonly reserved for a blockbuster film premiere. "When we pull together. Less grumbling, more grunting. We're not lifting feathers here." With each sound of a forced cheer, you definitely feel the camaraderie deepening. Imagine it, a chorus of sweaty individuals ready for the day ahead, each secretly harboring a wish they had just decided to become fishmongers instead. The method behind the madness is remarkably simple. Ropes, logs, and a lot of good old-fashioned muscle. Just like your gym's leg day, but somehow more sand and less protein shake. As you pull that mammoth stone up yet another incline, there's an eerie rhythm that develops. It's like a bizarre ancient version of karaoke, complete with echoing yells that could easily be mistaken for early rap battles. "Huzzah! Huzzah!" turns into, "Let's go, team! My arms are about to become toothpicks." But fear not, a silver lining awaits.
you discover a smorgasbord of alternative using, from dorky chants to endearing nicknames for the stones. You start calling them Boulder McGrumpy and Rocky Balboa, which only the guys pulling at the end can hear, but it spirals into giggles nonetheless. Now, as you sweat and soldier through the task, there's a giggle-worthy moment that may or may not have made it into this thing we now call ancient history. Mid-lift, one overly dramatic laborer, let's call him Horace, the slightly overzealous, decides to try and take a shortcut. Over the sand dune, naturally. He acts like a rock star in a music video, and for a
Brief moment, everything clicks. The sand, the laborers, the sun setting. Except instead of unveiling a new dance move, he trips, falling dramatically amid a cloud of dust and sand, an instant classic moment worthy of being etched into a stone tablet. And that's when the overseer steps in, a mix of astonishment and horror painted on his face. Horace, less theatricality, more perseverance. But the moment you all share a collective chuckle eases the tension like a soothing balm. Totally not what the overseer had in mind, but hey, if morale can rise with every tumble, so be it. Now comes lunchtime, a brilliant scene amidst sunlit reverie. Once you're slightly less sweaty, everyone gathers in makeshift circles to break bread. Day-old pita, a smooth hummus-like paste, and, if you're lucky, perhaps the odd fruit that defiantly survived the sandstorms. The conversations flow like a fine wine, full of humor and wild speculation. You know what would make this easier? Small wheeled carts. I bet we could, roll the stones. After dining like ancient kings, aka slightly less stale breads, the laughter revives, twisting into inventive discussions about pyramid origami and stone placement strategies that revolve around extreme games of tug-of-war, only with boulders instead of ropes. If we win, we get to build the next pyramid with ice, someone suggests, and suddenly visions of future laborers wearing ice caps spring to mind. As the day progresses and the shading of sunset blankets the site in brilliant hues, everyone gets in the groove again, hoisting stones that feel like the last slice of pizza everyone claims they want, but no one actually wants to lift, becomes an oddly fantastic bonding experience. You've turned labor into a peculiar mini-sport, competing not just for efficiency, but for comedic effect. Look at me, I'm practically a chariot in a parade of boulders, you exclaim as you dramatically pivot while pretending to pose with a rock. By the time the day winds down, you realize you haven't just spent hours hauling stones, but cultivating friendships through shared silliness. Each muscle ache is accompanied by laughter echoing through the dusk. Who knew pyramids weren't just monuments of stone, but showcases for ancient Olympic-level absurd competition? As you tread the sandy path back to your resting place, you smile, knowing that your daily toil wasn't just about lifting. No, it was about the glorious camaraderie and chaos that came with every hefty haul. And when future generations write about how the pyramids were built, they'll reflect not just on the engineering marvels,
but on the undeniable spirit of those slightly sweaty, very humorous laborers who made a monumental task one for the laughs. Because if you're going to build something that survives for thousands of years, why not do it with a smile?
Chapter 24. The Pharaoh's Workday. Hey guys, gather round and prepare to drift off into a history that's almost as absurd as that time you forgot to mute yourself on your work call. Tonight, we explore something even more precarious than your last attempt at assembling IKEA furniture: the labor of the ancient Egyptian pyramid builders. Imagine waking up surrounded by sand, sun, and a pharaoh shouting orders that seem to echo through eternity, and then realizing you forgot to pack your sunscreen. But hey, who needs modern-day comforts when you can be part of one of the most remarkable feats of engineering in history? You know the drill. If you enjoy this snooze fest of mildly interesting history, like, subscribe, and comment. Only if you actually feel like it, of course. So, picture this. It's 2560 BCE. You've just woken up in ancient Egypt. The sound of a distant rooster crows urgently, except it sounds more like a tambourine at a badly organized music festival. You stretch, and as you do, you can feel the coarse linen of your tunic clinging to you like an overzealous hug from a grandma who thinks you've lost too much weight. With your day set to involve moving massive stones, you can't help but wonder, did the ancient Egyptians have anything that resembled a coffee? How about a stiff drink? Your day will consist of lifting granite and hoping you don't become a historical footnote, the morning air seems to whisper. Now, as you step outside, the sun hits your face like a warm slap. How do you feel right now? Sufficiently caffeinated or regrettably underprepared? Spoiler alert, push that thought aside. You're about to haul a block that weighs more than your future hopes and dreams. And, by the way, what's with the pharaoh? How does one person get all this power while you're left dragging rocks? It's a mystery worth pondering as you survey the worksite. Simply put, you're about to endure a workday under the watchful eye of your pharaoh. Let's talk about that pressure. You're not just motivated by the promise of immortality, but also by the fear of becoming part of the decoration on a pyramid that someone swears is a portal to the afterlife. With that in mind, you tug on your rope with all the resolve of someone who forgot to pay their electricity bill. The other laborers beside you mirror your straining faces, reverently pulling as if your lives depend on the successful placement of these heavy blocks, which, in truth, may not be too far from reality. As you pull, grunting like a pair of hippos during a spat, your mind drifts to the logistics of this entire operation. Did anyone consider that there might be a better way to haul stones? Like, I don't know, a wheel? As the stone creaks ominously, you can't help but think, is this really the best we can do? Are we just waiting for someone to invent the dolly? But no matter, a crew of highly motivated workers with more grit than grace is on this job, and you're no exception.
And who could forget lunchtime? Lunchtime in ancient Egypt was like a medieval potluck gone wrong. Everyone gathers in small, awkward groups, feasting on what's less gourmet and more
What are we eating again? A whole lot of bread and pulses, sprinkled with a hope that it might magically transform into something that resembles a 5-star meal. As you chew, you daydream about the world beyond the stone heaps. Perhaps a cafe featuring poofs of magically plush pita bread and endless hummus. But alas, here you are, nestled in a circle trying to discover innovative ways to make bricks more palatable with the help of rock-solid humor. After filling your stomachs once again with rations that might just qualify as a penance rather than a meal, everyone resumes the hard labor. Only this time, comedic inspiration hits. You clothe your boulder with ridiculous nicknames. Meet Rocky Balboa, King of the Stone Ages, you shout, arising snickers from your comrades. Suddenly, hauling feels just a bit lighter. Laughter, the sweetest of breaks in this life of toil. Yet, amid the camaraderie, the ever-looming Pharaoh watches. You half expect him to fall back in time and regress into a tantrum if anyone puts their back out or forgets the biohazard warning about lifting with your legs. You think about the risk of missing a stone's birthday and the Pharaoh declaring it an unsanctioned holiday. How dare you skip the stone formation's celebration, you imagine him proclaiming. Little do they know, friendship and feigned bravery bind you, lifting stone and stone, almost like sweating camaraderie found in today's gym memberships. As day turns to dusk and shadows elongate like your motivation to work, you feel exasperated. But somewhere amidst the weight of the stone and the growl of your stomach, you realize something. You're not just building a pile of heavy rocks. Oh no, you're constructing a legacy. That, and an opportunity for future generations to argue about how it all actually happened. They'll ponder whether it was aliens, slaves, or your glorious, sweat-drenched ancestors. As you shuffle home for the evening, the ambient sounds of the desert fill the air, and all that labor doesn't feel nearly as heavy anymore. After all, a sense of belonging, even amid chaos, is like a warm blanket draping over you. You know you're part of something far larger than yourself, and while your back may ache and your shoulders might complain, you hope to somehow be remembered as the great lightweight comedian of 2560 BCE. Because if there's one thing you've learned, it's that a little humor and loads of imagination can turn even the most daunting of tasks into legendary tales. Sleep well, knowing those majestic pyramids were not just monuments of granite. They were built upon spirited laughter, creativity, and maybe just a little bit of absurd resistance against the bounds of earthly toil. Chapter 25. The Pyramid at Dawn. Hey guys, welcome back to our cozy corner of mildly interesting history, a space even more inviting than that time your cat decided your lap was a throne. Tonight, we're off to ancient Egypt, a land so hot and sandy you'll wonder if you accidentally sat down at a beach party without the sunscreen. Again. We find ourselves squarely at the Great Pyramid of Giza, a structure so massive and impressive it would make even an Instagram influencer weep with envy. We're here to explore the mysteries behind this monumental architectural feat that has tantalized historians, conspiracy theorists, and, well, anyone who has to assemble furniture from IKEA. Are you ready to travel back to 2560 BCE? Spoiler alert, you'll be cold calling your future self from a time with no phones, no Wi-Fi, and certainly no frozen yogurt. But I digress. Before we dive in, I invite you to dim the lights, crank up that fan, and cozy up like a librarian in a hammock. Let's face it, history can be a real snooze fest, unless you add a sprinkle of humor, which we have in abundance. Have you ever wondered what it'd be like to wake up as a laborer under a pharaoh? Or how many ways you can mispronounce hieroglyphs? How about, what would you bribe a pyramid builder today? Frozen yogurt? A lifetime supply of sunscreen? Congratulations! You've just woken up in a world where all of that is irrelevant. Here you are at the break of dawn, greeted by the sight of the Great Pyramid shimmering in the early light like a slightly rusty diamond. As you rise, the first thing you notice is the overwhelming stillness of the air, save for a breeze that feels like the universe just exhaled. The sun peeks up over the horizon, illuminating the Great Pyramid of Giza in a wash of iridescent white. If this were a trend on social media, hashtag OMG Giza would be trending worldwide. You squint against the light, taking in the perfect geometric marvel before you. The pyramid stands over 481 feet tall, which, let's be real, is much taller than that office building your neighbor built without a permit. Unlike that questionable structure, this pyramid has been engineered with precision that would impress even the most pedantic architect. What's missing, though? A golden sign that reads, "This was not built by aliens." You chuckle to yourself, already envisioning ancient aliens in tiny hard hats, debating if it's better to construct a pyramid or just start a pyramid scheme. As you gather your bearings, you notice the cool stone beneath your feet, a stark contrast to the hot sand. You wonder if anyone's ever held a stone-cold beverage here. If so, you need the recipe and probably some accessories to match. The area is bustling with workers, but more like a festival than a workplace. Camaraderie fills the air. Everyone's in their linen garments, some probably wondering whether they'll make it through the day without melting into
a puddle of regret. The rhythmic sound of chiseling echoes through the air, like a group of musicians tuning their instruments for an impromptu show. Chiseling a massive stone? It's a workout akin to the most intense CrossFit class you've ever taken, and you are, regrettably, out of shape. The workers around you are equally determined, grunting and laughing as they maneuver the enormous granite blocks. "Gotta lift it like it's a Tuesday," one jokes, and chuckles ripple through the group. How's that for finding humor in your labor? Between the exertion and the excitement, you ponder,
just how did they get these colossal stones to the pyramid site? Theories abound, with occasional whispers of ramps, sleds, or even back pain brought on by poor lifting methods. Oh, the irony. Was the original ergonomic design in ancient Egypt a stone block with built-in handles? If only, you think. Or maybe a chariot for those lazy days. Allow your imagination to wander into the lunch break, the most sacred part of any construction worker's day. Instead of brown-bagged lunches from home, everyone gathers under the shadow of the glorious pyramid for a meal that could be generously described as humble. Can you smell that delightful combination of bread and what you assume is pulse? It's less gourmet feast and more, let's just get through today. Ever tried chewing on a rock while thinking about your next meal? No, you just can't make this stuff up. Once the labor resumes, you and your fellow builders draw humor from lifting the stones. This one's named the Great Heartbreak, you proclaim, hoisting an especially heavy block. Laughter erupts as others chime in with names that sound like they belong in a B-grade action movie. Stonezilla, or The Block of Doom. With every chuckle, it feels as though the weight on your shoulders lightens. No pun intended. But don't think for a moment that the Pharaoh wasn't watching over everyone like a hawkish overseer double-fisting cups of coffee. If the vibe shifts to too much fun, you half expect him to declare an unsanctioned game of pin the tail on the pyramid. Because is there anything worse than being late to a bureaucratic mixture of hieroglyphics and granite? As dusk approaches with the grace of a clunky toddler, you feel exhaustion settle in. But as you look at the monumental structure you've helped build, the sweat and toil fades into euphoria. You're not just constructing a pile of rocks, no. You're creating a legacy that will incite discussions for millennia to come. Was it really built by aliens? Or should we give credit to the over-caffeinated Egyptians with a penchant for engineering? So rest easy, dear listener, and take comfort in knowing these majestic outlines against the setting sun are a testament to not just human ingenuity, but the laughter, sweat, and questionable snacks that brought them to life.
And now, as the desert wind softens to a whisper, as the heat of the day fades from the stones, and the mighty silhouettes of the pyramids sink gently into the twilight, let your breath slow, and let your mind settle into stillness. Tonight, we walked beside people whose lives were far more ordinary and far more extraordinary than myth ever allowed. Not slaves, not aliens, just human hands, human minds, and human determination working together beneath a sun that showed them no mercy and a sky that held no secrets. We saw the architect hunched over his perfect geometric plan, measuring, aligning, recalculating, proving that precision isn't modern and brilliance isn't new. We watched laborers laugh through exhaustion, share bread in the shade, tease each other as they hauled limestone with aching backs and stubborn pride. We felt the rhythm of thousands moving as one, not because they were forced, but because they believed their work meant something, that it connected them to kings, to gods, and to a future they would never see. We witnessed the ingenuity of ramps, levers, sleds, water, teamwork, and the quiet humor that slips into even the hardest days. Grumbling workers, spilled baskets of sand, and supervisors pretending they know more than they do. Humanity, real, ordinary, beautiful humanity, woven into every stone. So now, as you lie in your soft modern bed, surrounded by comforts unimaginable in ancient times, take a moment to feel grateful. Grateful for cool rooms, gentle lights, clean water, and nights that demand nothing from you. Let the desert fade. Let the pyramids rest. Let your thoughts drift like sand settling after wind. You're safe. You've done enough for today, and everything else can wait until morning. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and slip softly into sleep. Good night.